Hey guys, I'd like to thank everyone who has pre-ordered my book, Life of the Party. As you can tell from my Twitter feed, if you tweet your receipt, I follow, retweet, and favorite you. Why do I do that? Because I'd be an asshole if I didn't. Your pre-order determines how well this book does opening week, and how well it does opening week determines how well it does overall. So if you haven't already, please go to BertCast.com and pre-order my book, Life of the Party. And if you have pre-ordered it, you know I love you with all my heart. I am back on tour. Pittsburgh, March 7th and 8th. Chicago, March 14th and 15th. West Palm, March 21st and 22nd. Edmonton, April 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Today's guest, comedian, sports writer, club owner, Larry the Cable Guy critic, and ex-MySpace wizard, Steve Hofstetter.
This is the Bertcast.
We're recording. What happened? What happened to it?
Sirius didn't really know if it wanted to be like a jukebox of just stand-up clips or have original content. And then
It was hard to find original content on Sirius.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Like it was something that you turned on kind of like you would. I'm gonna skip the networks, but there's certain networks, not mine included, but that you turn on and you just leave on all day. And Travel Channel was kind of one like that. But Sirius was something like that it's like original content was kind of got lost. Like Stern, you went for.
Well, when Stern came over, basically, they diverted every bit of resource to that. And that was toward the end of when I was there. And it was like, do you know Mike Trainer?
No.
He's a comic. He was like one of the people on the show. And he said that they advertised it as if they were advertising nuclear launch codes. Like, we would get, like, maybe one commercial a week, and it would be in the middle of the night. Like, people didn't know what the fuck the show was.
The show was 4 quotas. You had 4 different ethnicities of comics?
Kind of. It was a white comic, a black comic, a female, and a wild card.
And what was the wild card? Just Puerto Rican?
Could be anything.
It had to be Puerto Rican. You're in New York. It had to be Puerto Rican.
Yeah, it was. Everyone was Puerto Rican. Whether or not they were Puerto Rican, they were Puerto Rican. It could be like a gay comic, it could be an Indian comic, it could be a second white comic, which it often was. But that's how the whole thing came about and I just realized I didn't even know where we were recording for. All right, cool.
Yeah, In the Man Cave with Steve Hofstetter.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, these are my favorite podcasts, I'm hoping you don't know who Steve Hofstetter is, so you get to be really kind of fascinated for the next hour and a half about the kind of path that you've led, because your path has been one that's been subject to debate for other comics. It's been controversial. It's been somewhat, I would say, I wouldn't say calculated, but like you have the same kind of work ethic as Dane. Okay. So you're very you're regimented.
I'm hoping the opposite. I'm hoping people actually know who the fuck I am, but but
in this podcast, they don't even know who I am.
But as an honest person to myself, I imagine they don't.
I'm hoping. I'm sure I'm guarantee you that
for my fragile ego, I
don't have to talk about ego to this guy. Oh God, I'm fucking. Oh,
well, I'm curious. I'm curious about, because I've heard, in terms of what other comics think of me. I've heard everything from, nicest guy in the world to unfeeling robot. I
never got unfeeling robot from you. I've always thought you were really nice, but I was always I was always Team Hofstetter.
Yeah, well, thank you. There is, Jay Black described it really well. He said that I'm binary, that people are either ones or zeros when it comes to me.
I just thought you have a very computer.
Well, no, but it also works. No, but that's the thing. Like Adam Hunter, who's one of my best friends in the world, refers to me constantly as an alien. And just the idea that like I approach things a little bit differently. And and people give Dane shit for that. And I think that this is a business, and a lot of people forget that this is a business, and you have to claw your way up there. And as long as nothing you do is immoral, and as long as nothing you do is under the table and shady, then it's fine that you work. I always think it's hilarious when comics give me shit for working hard. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Should I have slept later? I apologize.
Comics we all want the same thing. We all want success, and we all want to be respected. But in a weird way, we respect those who kind of fuck it all. Like, who gives a shit? We always talk about the sets that someone had where they didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And they really pissed it away. And those are the funniest to us.
Yeah.
Like, and in a weird way, but, and then, like, when I use Dane as an example only because he is the example of the first guy that I really knew that took advantage of the internet.
Yeah.
You were, I think, quantifiably, easily the second guy who took advantage of it on the next fucking level. Like, but you also still had that kind of fuck it, throw it in the fire attitude. The name of your first album was Death to the Cable Guy.
It was my second album, but it was the first one that anybody knew anything about. It was Cure for the Cable Guy.
Cure for the Cable Guy, but it was the Cable Guy hung in cable
by a coaxial cable on the cover. Yeah, we actually couldn't even hang an actual Larry doll because they were so cartoonishly stupid that we had to like dress up a G.I. Joe as Larry the Cable Guy in order to get the photo shoot to work. But it was, I got album cover of the month in Stuff Magazine, and there was, it was a huge controversy, mainly because when I recorded the album, I was 26. I had turned 26 a week before I recorded the album. I was a kid, and people hadn't heard of me. And so for me to fire a shot that big as an unknown, people freaked out, which was so funny to me because if you're right, who cares how old you are?
Yeah.
If you're right, you're right. It doesn't matter. It's the same way that people are like, oh, well, he can tell a fat joke because he's fat. It's like, really? Does that make it okay? Or is the joke itself okay? And so that was a big controversy. And there were a lot of comics who gave me a ton of shit. And I remember who every one of them was because I'm not stupid. I remember the people who were like, well, fuck this kid. And now that I'm not anymore, that now that I'm 34 and I've got a bunch of TV credits and I produce on a TV show and things like that.
On comedy clubs?
Yeah, I own 3 comedy clubs, and I don't forget who the whiners were. I don't forget who the unprofessional dicks were.
No, I was introduced to you just before that.
Yeah.
Like, just before that album came out. You had, and I remember Marshall Childs called me.
Yeah, this is the virtual comedy heroes, right?
Yes. Marshall Childs called and he said, I got a gig in Athens. Maybe the worst gig I've ever done in my entire life, by the way. The gig, literally to this day, I got into a fight with Eddie If that night.
Really?
It was a fucking clusterfuck.
This was, I don't even know about this one.
We did 2 dates. We did one in Athens and one in Atlanta.
Okay, yeah, I mainly knew the Atlanta one.
And this was at the time you had... So MySpace comes out. Dane owns MySpace. You literally... I think a foothold is the... You basically own
I
MySpace.
made a huge mistake.
Wait, so what? Tell us from the beginning what happened.
All right, so I noticed... It started with Facebook, actually, for me.
Really? Okay, because you were in college, so you actually had a Facebook account.
Well, I had just graduated. I had an EDU address from Columbia, which was one of the first 9 schools on Facebook. And so I was able to have a Facebook account before most adults. I had been out of school for maybe 2-3 years, or I guess a little bit longer. It was 2004. Okay. Actually, you know what? Let me go back a little bit further. So I don't know if people are familiar with iJustine, but she's a blogger. She sometimes does stuff on MTV. She's got like 11 million Twitter followers. It's ridiculous. She and I were friendly / a little bit dating at the time, and this was before she was doing any of this stuff, before I was doing any of this stuff, when we were both just internet dorks. And so she, as a joke,
and by the way, this is before internet dork became hip.
Yeah. This is when
you were an internet dork.
Yeah, this was when I was just trying to have contact with other human beings, and Justine was very hot, and I was like, really? There's a hot one here?
And also for the record, that was the thing that turned me off about the internet when Dane introduced me to it and was like, dude, you talk to these people. I was like, who fucking talks on the internet?
Yeah.
And he was like, trust me, everybody.
Real people. Yeah. Yeah. So
ticket sales.
Yeah, hipsters. So Justine, as a joke, made a profile for me on MySpace and a profile for Ashton Kutcher on MySpace and had them talk to each other. Just kidding around of like, and sent me this thing where like we were commenting on each other's pages. Like he was like, oh man, I'm so sorry I missed your show. We totally got to hang next time I'm in LA. Oh. And it was just in the ether. It was like, there was no promotion. There was nothing. All of a sudden, I'm getting added by like 3,000 12-year-old girls who are big Ashton Kutcher fans. And it hits me where I go, well, shit, this is interesting. And I don't know what to do with it yet, but it's interesting. Then Facebook came about. And this was, someone had told me about it. And as a joke was like, oh, I bet I've got more friends on this than you do. And it was a girl I knew at UPenn. And I was like, well, you're still an undergrad. You probably do. And then I was like, well, let me go add some people at schools that I'm playing soon, because I was a college act. So I added some people at UF and at
You're how old
Muhlenberg.
at the time?
This was
23,
Christmas
24?
Eve 2004. So this was I just turned 25.
Okay.
So I guess I'd been out of school for about 3 years. So I added a couple people at those schools, and suddenly 200 of their friends added me back, and those shows were packed. And it hit me. It was actually a little bit before Christmas Eve, because Christmas Eve is when I did it, because, I'm Jewish. I had shit to do. What am I going to do on Christmas? So
I love looking at Jewish people's Instagram on Christmas Eve in Cabo,
and
you're like, fucking really?
It's the best. We're actually getting shit done. We're having a good time. Bought a comedy club on Christmas this year. So I started realizing, holy shit, this is huge. And on Christmas Eve 2004, I launched a quest for 10,000 friends. And I was writing for collegehumor.com at the time.
Okay.
And so I had access to a lot of college students. And so as a joke, I was like, let's do a little social experiment. I want to get 10,000 friends. In 2 weeks, I had 15,000. And I was like, okay, now it's a quest for 100,000. Let's do this. Let's take this to the next level, which is something that has often gotten me into trouble. Seeing the goal line and going, fuck, why can't I score 8 touchdowns this game? It's like, well, because you're not fucking supposed to. You're not supposed to.
Because then you're not passing the ball to anybody else.
Exactly.
And the team gets in the locker room and everyone's like, oh, look who got the MVP. Of course he did.
Yeah, and exactly. People get pissed off. And so, but it worked. And I ended up with 200,000 friends on Facebook, and which is the most anyone's ever had. You could still look it up. It's weird. Every now and then, like a German newspaper will do a story on it. It's very strange.
Yeah.
I don't know why a German paper, but they're very obsessed.
Dude,
with
German and Denmark. In Denmark,
yeah.
Dude, they cover shit that you're like, really? Still?
Yeah. You're like, why is this?
I love them. I'm huge in Denmark.
That's awesome.
I did my What Will the Maid Think series.
Yeah.
Which was really popular in the States, but it blew the fuck up. It would crash my site once a month in Denmark.
That is nuts. And you just go to Denmark. You can't walk around.
No. They just know it's a comic. They don't really know it's me. I mean, I imagine I could probably try to do a tour, but I don't speak Denmarkian. So
yeah, well, that's your first problem.
Yeah.
It's called Denmarkish. So, so then this blew up, and then I saw MySpace as a possibility for it also, and so then I moved it over to MySpace, and I started doing things, and I realized that people love local, and this hit me from touring and seeing local radio, where people would rather listen to some shit show that was recorded in their small town than like a good national show, because it's like, well, this is about me.
Yeah.
So I divided my MySpace profiles. Facebook, you could only have one because you needed that confirmed address. MySpace, you can make whatever address you want. So I made a MySpace profile for every city I could tour, and each one blew up because people were like, oh, this guy cares enough about, Burlington, Vermont, that he's going to make a profile for it, and he's going to, and so I could sell out any city in the country at that point. And I was barely headlining at all.
25 years old. You've been doing stand-up maybe 3 years? 2 years?
I started when I was 21. I started improv when I was 13, so I'm a bit of a different story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had headlined maybe 10 times at this point. And so, aside from college gigs. And so then that blew up.
In college gigs, you learn a lot more than you'd think.
Yeah, I think you actually do, because they're so bad sometimes that, you go there and you're like, okay, if I can make 10 people who are upset that I'm here laugh.
Yeah.
Like, what can I do at a comedy club where people paid money?
Football player with his arms crossed in the front row, who you don't even know why he's there, but he just wants to mad dog you the whole show and prove that you're not funny because you don't look like him.
Oh, yeah. I almost got my ass kicked by an entire lacrosse team.
Bobby Kelly has my favorite line ever. Some black guy was sitting. I forget where it was, but it happened to me at the same college. I want to say it was Ball State, and the black guy just sat with his arms crossed, pulled the chair up in the front, and just mean dogging him. And then Bobby Kelly said something. You don't scare me. He goes, I should. And he goes, no. You're in college. Nothing about you scares me. Your friends that didn't go to school, they scare me.
Nice.
You're the one that applied for an entrance exam. I didn't even, and just tore this fucking guy's ass open. Bobby Kelly is one of my favorite. Anyway, keep going. I'm sorry.
Bobby's awesome. So the MySpace thing kind of blew up with that, and I actually got into a little trouble. This was the 8 touchdown problem, where MySpace decided they wanted every comic to become a comedian profile. And
they also decided they wanted to start a MySpace comedy page.
Yes.
You owned the domain MySpace comedy, correct?
Well, kind of. I had myspace.com/comedy.
Yeah.
By owned, I mean, that was my profile. That was my main profile, which is part of how it blew up. And because there was, when they said you could choose your own username, I'm like, it's like the first day of the internet. You can go whatever.com you want. Like I told Hunter to take MySpace/comedian. Now, when they wanted to do the myspace.com/comedy, I said, hey, I'd be happy to help you out. I taught them about how to put together a comedy tour. I had a nice long conversation with them. They changed all my profiles to comedian profiles, which sucked because then they had a top 100 comedians, and I was 73 of them.
That was the one thing.
That's where people started getting pissed.
Yeah, because comics, this little thing you need to know about comics is we really do judge ourselves based on other comics.
Sure.
Like podcasts. Please go rate, review, and subscribe to this if you haven't already. But do me a favor, stop and rate and review, because ultimately, whatever ego I have is either swollen or deflated by where I am on the podcast list.
And you see some fucking acting student with 80 million other actor friends who has a ton of reviews because he just got all his actor waiters to review it, and you're like, but I'm on television.
And you'd go to that, and Dane Cook would be number 1, Carlos Mencia would be number 2, Rogan would be like 4 or 5.
Yeah, Cat Williams would be up there.
But you
and then
were
I was
always
the
like
rest of them.
5 through 27.
Yeah.
Like you were all of them, and it was like, and you were like, I just want to break through the Hofstetters.
Well, yeah, I didn't. That's hilarious.
I just want to get in the Hofstetter mix here.
Yeah. I did not want that to happen. I did not. And I called them and I asked them, I said, can you please undo this? Look what you've done. People are mad. And they didn't do it. And then, and another thing, by the way, that I offered them, I knew Facebook's spam algorithm. So I knew how they, and it's a very simple process to how they, it's a little dorky, but it's a very simple process.
Pretend I don't know what you just said.
Okay, I knew, I'll pretend.
Yeah, let's just pretend for the listeners out there.
I knew Facebook's system for how they mark a message as spam.
Okay.
And it was pretty simple. They assign everything a certain point value. If you send a message twice within an hour, you get like an extra point. Or if you send 2 messages within 2 minutes, you get like 10 points or whatever. And when it equals 100 points, they go, you're a spammer, you can't send for an hour.
Okay.
And if it equals more, you can't send for 2 days. If it equals more, your account's gone.
That happened to me.
So, yeah. And so I told MySpace about this. And I said, hey, I know their spam algorithm. I can help you with all your fucking gift card terribleness of, I'm a 25-year-old Russian woman, and I'd love to have sex with you.
Yeah.
And here's $500 free at Victoria's Secret. And this site's becoming total bullshit. And I told them I could help them with that. And they were very cocky, and they were like, we got this under control. And they clearly didn't. And then
they're gone mostly, right?
That's what killed them.
Yeah.
And then the ultimate insult was they took MySpace comedy from me. I had offered it to them originally, and they said, no, don't worry about it. And then they took it from me, and they were like, is there anything we can do for you in exchange? I'm like, oh, well, that's nice. Why don't you make me your featured comedian, considering I'm the most popular comic on MySpace, and you've never done that yet?
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, sure. And they put me, I think, like 4 under people managed by Levity, because they had controlled MySpace comedy at the time.
Seriously?
And so it was, it was a total fuck you from them to me. And I also brought like 2,000 comics to them because I was the first one that was really pushing this, and it left a really bitter taste in my mouth to them. But it's fine because my horse was Facebook, and that won.
Yeah.
So it was a whole big. Anyway, that's the long story of it. But that was my favorite part of it is that MySpace had an all hands on deck meeting about what they do about me, like as if I was invading them or something.
That's really.
It was I was almost in the Facebook movie.
Really?
Yeah, they were talking to Sorkin about it, and I think it was too much of a red herring. But I was what Facebook called their first whale, which programming basically means something so big you have to program around it. And my profile, this was when they were doing separate schools. My profile at Columbia was getting more hits than the rest of the Columbia network, and so they had to reprogram the site to accommodate that.
Now, how do you find out about that?
I was in touch with them. You get big enough, they reach out to you. So Dustin Moskovitz, who's one of the people in the movie, or one of the characters. I guess he didn't play himself. He was always super nice to me and reached out, and early on, and he was helping me and I was helping him. It was kind of like I was telling him about how artists would use Facebook. Here's how to make this artist friendly, because at the time everyone was on MySpace. And he was giving me clues and stuff how to use Facebook better. That's how I learned the spam algorithm, and that's how, all that stuff. Also, by the way, and I should have kept it because it would have been worth $1 million now, but I totally had evidence, and this wasn't through Dustin, this was through an accident on my part. I totally had evidence that they did steal from the Winklevoss brothers.
Really?
100%, and I don't have it anymore. I had a screenshot of, I don't know where the fuck it was. I don't know what computer it's on. I cannot find it. I looked for it one day because I'm like, I could sell this for $10 million.
Yeah.
There was some back end thing on their website that was clearly an old thing from Connect You, which was the Winklevoss site.
Yeah.
And clearly they had that coding on their site. Like they had that saved. That's the website that Zuckerberg worked for the summer before Facebook.
Really?
And so clearly he had saved some of the code, and I saw it. And it was just an accident. I was just typing some stuff to look for something, and I stumbled on it, and I was like, holy fuck. But at the time, I was so loyal to Facebook, and I was so loyal to Dustin that I was like, I can't show this to anybody.
Yeah.
And I guess I was dumb enough not to save it. Because now that Dustin's not there anymore, I'm like, well, fuck you guys. But well, it's not the same people.
Yeah.
But yeah, they reset my profile to have a maximum of 5,000 people. They reset everyone's.
Yeah, that really stunk because I loaded up 5,000 quickly, and then I was like, well, this is pointless for me.
Yeah.
And I got to be dead honest with you, I barely use Facebook now.
Yeah. Yeah, the pages, they finally, I was part of why they allowed the pages to be over 5,000. I campaigned for that pretty hard.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wanted the profiles too, because people want to add the profile, not your page. People want to be able to chat with you. People want to be able to.
Yeah, they don't want to just follow what you do. They want to be able to interact. And
exactly.
Quite honestly, the reason I'm on Facebook is so I can check out how fat ex-girlfriends are.
Yeah, that's.
And if I can't do that on a page.
Isn't it so depressing when they're not? I think it's so depressing when.
To be honest with you, I only have like one ex-girlfriend on there really that I can check up with.
Yeah.
And she looks great. She just had a kid. She looks really happy.
I'm not friends with any of them because I just don't want that in my life. But I did.
Really? That's so interesting because you're such a social networking guy that I would assume I'd assume you don't have bad breaks at all.
That. Oh,
like,
no.
With chicks and stuff.
Oh, you kidding me? Really? Binary, man. They became zeros pretty quickly.
Really?
No, I mean, I still have. There's still like people who I like casually dated, but I believe if you end something, it's for a good reason. You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, sometimes it can be ended of like, this just wasn't a fit. Best of luck to you. But even that, I don't want them in my life. You know. My wife and I made a rule early on, which is, anyone that has seen you naked should not be in your life once you're married.
I can agree with that.
So, well, anyone who's seen you naked in a sexual context.
Oh, because a lot of people have seen me naked.
Yeah, that's
a lot.
That's true.
But so I remember. So we did that virtual comedy
heroes. Yeah, it was
virtual comedy heroes.
Me and you, Adam Hunter, Jay Davis, Eddie Ift, Ben Glebe.
Yeah.
I think those were the people.
And the deal was there was a program like Steve will set up a MySpace profile for you in Atlanta and in Athens.
Yes.
He will then get you friends. I don't know how you did that.
It was a bot, which at the time was real controversial, but now like everybody knows it's just an auto responder. It's an auto whatever.
Yeah, I didn't even. They were like, you can download it and you can use it for your own, but Steve.
I didn't program it. I just knew a guy who had one.
Yeah. How do you even find that? Are you the kind of person that then sees MySpace, sees that you can click an ad, and then goes, there has to be a quicker way to do this?
Yes.
And then you search the internet?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. It was actually the original thing that happened was I was working for Comedy Express TV at the time, which was a fledgling cable network that never got off the ground. But while that was happening, someone was talking about, they have this automatic bot that allows you to approve your friend requests. And it hit me, and I go, well, that's not what you need an automatic bot for. You need an automatic bot to generate them.
Yeah.
And so I went searching, and that's how I found it.
Really?
Yeah.
Fever Records.
I don't even remember.
I remember. I still get emails from them.
Yeah?
Yeah, like I downloaded it and then used it, and it was great. It was actually great.
Yeah.
But I remember we said that we were going to do the dates on like 2 weeks out, and within a week I had 5,000 friends, and within a week I had 15,000. I had more friends in Atlanta and in Athens than I had on my regular Facebook.
Yeah, that's how it went.
And I was like, this is fucking insane.
Yeah, and the real trick was, and so many people miss this when it comes to social networking, the real trick wasn't about quantity. It was about its quantity of quality. And the basic idea was you want to reach a lot of people, but you want to reach them in a way that will get them interested. And so I would reach out and I would say, hey, I'm a stand-up comic. I'm coming to Atlanta. Please check out this video. If you think I'm funny, please add me. If not, don't worry about it. Whereas other people would send messages that would be like, hey, I see from your profile that you love hardcore metal. And I'm like, I don't even have music in my profile. I don't even have, don't be that. You don't have to do that. Like, you don't have to lie to someone. You can be honest with them and still make them interested. And I believe the perfect sale is one where the buyer and the seller both feel like they get a good deal. And people who buy tickets are buyers, and people who sell them are sellers. And we have to make sure that they enjoy the show.
So we did that tour.
Yeah,
it was great. And then your Cure for the Cable Guy, I think, came out right around then.
Yes.
And it was like so volatile because some people were like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
And other people kind of like, I want to say like the David Crosses of the world kind of got behind you. I don't know if David Cross is an example of someone.
I've never interacted with Cross himself, but there were a lot of people who are like, yeah, it's about damn time, because we were all tired of people yelling "get her done" to us, which is what made me do it.
Full disclosure, my wife uses "get her done" in earnest. Like, she uses it. Come on, girls, let's go. Let's get on time for school. Get her done. Like,
I just met her for a second, and she seems like a wonderfully sweet person. But now she and I can never be friends. It just what made me do that album was when "Get Her Done" was the United States Air Force slogan. When it became like the official slogan, the ignorance of that made me realize, okay, this isn't a comic. This is a cultural force, and someone needs to say something. And I was just so tired of it. And I was also looking at comedy as a pendulum. And, the pendulum going back and forth, and realizing that it was time for it to go back into the smart comedy.
Yeah. And,
it went into this whole, this just my tractor's up on blocks, kind of comedy.
Yeah.
And I realized that it's time to swing back. And it was, then the rise of Jon Stewart and that whole school and the silliness of Dimitri Martin and that came right after. And so it was me trying to very publicly say, hey, come on, guys, this is not right. This is not, like, comedy doesn't need to pretend to be racist and homophobic, which Dan Whitney's not. And that's why it all happened. And it's funny, it's 8 years later, and it's still the thing I get asked about the most.
Really?
Yeah.
No, at what point, because it was, it was a brilliant marketing idea in the sense that it got your name out there a ton, but at what point, because I know I'll have a great idea, like a great tweet that's a little edgy, and then you put it out there, and then you feel the backlash. At what point did the backlash, you go, ooh, this is a little aggressive?
Pretty quickly. So much that I even dated someone I shouldn't have dated because just she was so supportive that I was like, I need that in my life. It was, if I could do it all over again, I would have still done it. I would have done it a little bit differently. I assumed more people would have agreed with me. I stated my case very carefully. The little liner notes that I wrote and I sent out. The first real incident happened the week before I released it. I met Lewis Black for the first time, and we met at a college convention, and we got along real well, and he seemed to be super nice and like, hey kid, if you ever need anything, that kind of, it was great. And then I didn't realize, I wouldn't have changed it, but he's very good friends with Dan Whitney. And Dan Whitney, the guy who plays Larry the Cable Guy.
Yeah.
And, I guess they were doing comedy in Florida together or whatever it was. But he responded. I sent an email to my address book being like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And he responded and said, like, you don't have any idea how wrong you are. And he had an AOL address, so instant messenger days. So I messaged him and I said, hey, I know you're very busy and I know you don't owe me anything, but I'd like to know why I'm wrong. And we had a little conversation. It was very respectful, but him basically saying that, respect other comics and he's a good person. And I was like, well, yeah, but none of that is what I'm talking about, you know? And he's like, and he said something about how if this was about, you know, George Bush, you know, I'd understand. And I said, how is this any different? You know, it's a cultural force that everyone knows. Like, how is this different just because he does stand up? And just because he's your friend, like, please see past that he's your friend. And basically, he's not going to change his mind. I mean, what would happen if someone said something about your close friend? Doesn't matter if they're right.
No, people say, people say, I understand that. And I've never met Larry. I mean, I just call him Larry only because I don't, like, I really... I don't know, but I've never met him. I have had his potato chips; they're pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah, I call him Dan just because it's his name.
But I've never met him. I know Colleen. I imagine you've never worked the Omaha Funny Bone.
I have not. No.
Okay.
There are a lot of clubs out there I've worked, and I've worked places much more rural than that, but not.
No, but Colleen, who runs it, is like literally best friends with Larry the Cable Guy, and I've never met him. I'd like to meet him. I don't have a really I don't have a problem with anything he does at all, and I'll tell you why. My wife, like, maybe if I would have married a different person, I would. But my wife comes from very, like, I mean, her dad's in there in his pajamas eating pancakes with the girls. Yeah, like that's her dad, and they come from a very rural, like, town of 1,200 people. And
but he doesn't.
Oh, I know, but I don't know. I don't know anything about him really.
Yeah, he's a private school kid from Nebraska.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Really?
He moved to he didn't move to Florida to get in-state tuition or to become a pig farmer. He moved to Florida to get in-state tuition at FSU.
He went to Florida State?
Which where you went, right?
He went to Florida State?
I believe so, yeah.
Shut the fuck up. Yeah. Now I like him more. No. But he
best of luck, by the way.
I know. I'm going to the game tomorrow.
Yeah?
Yeah, I got tickets for Tom Segura and one of my cameramen, Tyler.
Nice.
Yeah. But the opening movie, and I'll be real honest. Yeah. I probably would have shat on that whole blue-collar comedy thing. Yeah. Because I was like, because I had no real connection with that. It wasn't what I was talking about on stage. Yeah. And I don't, and I always believe that if you're going to make like a racist, homophobic joke, like if you're going to make it better be on the right side of the fence with a nod to the ridiculousness, not just straight up homophobic or racist. I'm not saying that that's what he does, but I'm just saying that, like, I looked at that, like, I don't want nothing to do with that movie. Right. Like, opening week, my wife got us 2 tickets. She's like, we're going. And I was like, I don't want to see this.
I haven't seen the movie.
I literally sat, like, going to be like, I'm a snooty comic. I'm going to sit in the back with my arms folded. Yeah. And we were the only 2 people at the ArcLight at the Blue Collar Comedy Tour movie. The opening weekend. Yeah. 2 people, me and my wife. And I did, it wasn't that bad of a movie. I think I write differently than a lot of those comics. Yeah. But I will tell you that Ron White story blew my fucking mind.
I actually love Ron White. I think he's fantastic. I think Foxworthy, while I'm not into his stuff as much, but when I was a kid, I loved Foxworthy, and I think he's a very smart writer. The problem I have with Dan Whitney, with Dan, with his character, is here's a guy who is tolerant, who is progressive, who is open-minded, and who is doing the character to make fun of those people. And then they caught onto it, and they started worshiping it. And he was like, well, I'm making money, I may as well be this. And like the jokes, like the one that I point to as the clearest example to me, at one point during his set, he would look back and see a shadow and goes, oh, I thought a black guy was trying to run up on me. That's the whole joke. So the entire joke is black people are scary, right, guys? And then an audience full of people who go, yeah, we're terrified of them. They're awful. Yeah. Like, and that's the reaction, And he has a joke about, where he refers to, I mean, and this is just straight up terrible, about how he refers to, all brown people of any ethnicity, as, I think, like, carpet riding, like, turban wearing. Yeah, it's just some really awful shit. And the basic joke is that they shouldn't be allowed to have public assembly. Like, that's the root of the joke.
By the way, if you word that properly, I will find that fun. Like, if you,
that would actually be amazing.
If you just I don't believe anyone that's a darker color than me should have public assembly.
Yeah, just watch a theater of people.
I'd fucking be on the ground. if you took, here's what's funny is if you took those premises and simply reworded them, explain them to you. Hey guys, don't you find I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Don't you find black people a little scary?
Yeah, like not terribly scary. Like I wasn't, but like looking over, I was like, "What is that?" You know, that would be. I need to write that hour.
No, I've never. If you just whittled down the premise of like
the whittled down premise of the Blue Collar Comedy Tour,
farts hilarious.
Yeah, like, aren't they right? Farts, and then like 20 minutes in, be like, remember farts, guys? Remember farts? That'd be amazing. We need to do that with everyone's set.
Oh,
we just found a new hobby.
That's a great bit.
To just take well-known bits. Also, we could do that with Cosby. We could do that with Carlin. Yeah. Like just their well-known bits, and just like with Carlin, just be like, older people tend to be Puritans, and then that's the whole. Like, aren't word choices silly?
Yeah,
like that's
my set. Thing. I'm an alcoholic and I robbed a train. All right, everybody, good night. I've made poor life decisions. Take care, everybody. I have a hard time saying no. I have not. No, I haven't seen his act. I'm excited. I'm interested. I really like to meet him. I'd like to find out.
I would love to.
That's the.
I would like to sit down with him and say, "Look, here's what I said when I was 25. Let's talk."
You have to have some sort of being in the business as long as you have. You have to have some sort of like evolution of your ideas of him a little bit.
I always believe he seems like I respect his work ethic. You know, I respect the hustle. I respect, you know, some of the writing.
Yeah.
But, you know, to watch a guy who's hawking junk food also do commercials for like liver pills or whatever it is, and to watch like there's.
Once again, he's nail on the head for me. He's
sure.
Liver
well,
pills.
Yeah, it's Prilosec or whatever it is.
Oh, that's Harper.
Harper. Yeah, like
I take those too.
But that's what I'm saying. Like the idea of like I'm causing the problem, and here buy the solution from me as well. Getting paid a lot of money for something you believe in is not selling out. And there's a myth in this business that in order to be a true artist, you got to live in a burlap sack. And that's bullshit. You can make money. You can live in a nice home. It can be wonderful. But doing something you don't believe in, that's what selling out is. And we are not responsible as artists for how the world responds to our art. We're responsible to react to that. And we're responsible to understand that maybe we're not getting the reaction we thought we'd get. You know? And if people misuse our art and misuse our quotes and we can't stop that. But what we can do is understand he went from, and here's where it came from for me. He went from satire to validation. He's validating the lifestyle he was originally making fun of. And it's such hypocrisy that, you know, that it was hard for me as someone who my comedy most of the time, everybody, you know, sometimes just writes something they think is kind of funny, but most of the time my comedy is about railing about truth and railing about, you know, how I want the world to get better. And there are two...
That's, by the way,
yeah,
that viewpoint for a comic can sometimes be exasperating and exhausting because you feel like sometimes the audience just doesn't give a fuck.
I know.
They only hear the bit. Like I used to talk a lot about race, and I used to talk about it in a very honest, direct way, but I wanted it to be so honest that it happened millions of times more than it didn't. I wanted it to black people and Latino people and gays to respect me and go, that's funny.
Yeah.
And he's being real. You can't fucking deny a guy. Not saying anything hateful, not saying he's talking about his own experiences and but what is insane is that you do get the person who just doesn't give a fuck and just wants to take you down because you said black person. How dare you say black person? And so I stopped. I really said, it's not worth it for me.
I had a kid at a show. I mean, it is for me just because the only reison I am a comic.
Yeah.
Like I would have been a teacher if I wouldn't.
I'm only a comic to get laughs. I swear to God, I realized that. I was like, if I want to.
Which I completely respect.
Right. Which you gotta.
There are two schools of thought. There's we got to go out and change people, and we got to give people the ability to forget about the bullshit and just enjoy themselves for a minute because the world's too hard.
Yeah.
So both of us are coming at it from the perspective of the world's too hard. And your school is saying, we're going to make it easier on you for a couple hours. And my school is saying, like, I'm trying to give you the tools to make it less hard. Yeah. And those are two completely different approaches, but it's still the same root and the same passion. And what kills me is when people go, okay, we're going to make you forget about it being hard by making it harder.
I see what you're saying.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
By making it worse. We're going to let you forget about your problems by creating problems for other people. And that's what hurts me, not as a comic, but as a human being. And I had the conversation during the whole cable guy stuff. I was doing a show at the New York Comedy Club, and I was the only white comic on a black show. And there was one comic who was just laying into me about how can you say funny is funny, and if it get laughs, it's okay. And I'm like, well, no, there's a lot of things that are not okay that might get laughs. And he's like, no, if it gets laughs, it's okay. I go, all right, I'll tell you what. I'm going to take the stage next, and I'm going to do an amazing joke about raping your sister. How are you going to feel about that? And he stammers a little bit, and I go, wait, I'm going to do it in blackface. You okay? And it was funny because the other comics were laughing at him now because now, his argument is just completely gone. But I was trying to show him, like, there are certain things, there are no topics that are offensive. There are premises that are offensive. When the premise is based on hate, it's offensive. Mm-hmm. And there are plenty of comics who, when I did Eddie If's podcast and Yoshi was the other guest, and it was the most... Like, I kept joking around about how I came in this room a good person. I walked in here a good person, and it was the most, like, if you were to take all the quotes out of context, it was absolutely terrible. But the whole thing was about breaking the shit down. It was about mocking the racism. It wasn't about adding to it. And that's the difference, for me, at least.
It's interesting because, I never really looked at it that way. And Yoshi is one of my favorite people in the world.
I love him.
And but you're right. If you take it out of context and you write it down, it does sound.
It's a terrible thing. You should be arrested.
It's like someone said to me the other day. If you took, we were in the car, we were shooting, and one of the crew members said, if you looked at the text between me and my wife, we'd both. I mean, people would be outraged.
Yeah.
And.
Well, I'll tell you something I said recently that was pretty awful. That there was a comic who just won Nick Anthony, who just won the final draft script contest for a sitcom pilot he wrote, and he was talking about it, and we're sitting there with another buddy of mine, and he was saying that, when I originally wrote the script, and because there's a lot of racist characters in the script, mm-hmm. and it's not that he is it's they're the bad guys, like they're the people who are ridiculous, and they're being made fun of, and so, but he said he's like, and I read it, in this UCLA writing class I was in, and it didn't get the response I wanted because there were a lot of older Latina women who were very upset, but didn't realize that it was the character that was being a jerk, not the writer.
Yeah.
And, and so we're talking about that, and he's like, I should have workshopped it, in front of more people. I didn't, imagine. And my buddy goes, well, don't they watch TV? Like, don't they watch TV? And I, being a total dick, said, well, sometimes it's left on at the hotel while they're cleaning. That's a terrible thing to say.
Yeah.
But the point of saying that was not like, oh, all Latina older women are maids. It was the point of making fun of the incapacity for someone who's too dumb to understand that script and to understand what was going on, of the idea of menial labor, and it was added to. So the point is, again, if you take the root of the joke and be like, hey, people who don't have the faculties to blah blah, like, it wouldn't be funny. But that's where the joke came from.
Well, I think comics also. I don't get offended.
Yeah,
like I don't get outraged. I don't get upset at any joke. I take every joke for the fact that you're trying to make a joke. It's like you look at what Natasha went through with the SpaghettiOs joke. Quite honestly,
I don't know about this.
Oh, she was on New Year's Eve. And I don't even want to. I don't even want to bring it up really too much because because I don't want her to, like, I know what it feels like to make a joke and then have people start. I don't know what it's like on that scale. I mean, she got fucking lambasted, but the true point is she chose not to apologize and said it was a joke.
I actually wrote on my Twitter yesterday, because I hate this this false apology shit. Yeah. And on my Twitter yesterday, I wrote, because about the Mitt Romney MSN reporter thing. Do you know about that? Mitt Romney, I guess he has a black grandkid that was adopted, and on some MSNBC show, the anchor, they were kind of making fun of the idea of a black kid being in the Romney family, and someone was like, which one of these is not like the other? And there was a huge outrage, because people love being outraged, and the second the right can pretend to be left, oh, they love it. You know, when they're like, look how racist the left is, and be like, well, what about the whole he was a member of the Mormon church while they denied black people existed? Like, what about that part, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why it was funny that he now has a black child in his family, because when you look at the root of it, that is actually hilarious. The fact that someone who didn't believe that black people were human beings, because that's what the Mormon church believed in the 60s, you know, that he now is a doting grandfather over a black child. Anyway, so point being, he was forced to apologize. So on my Twitter, I said, you know, anytime we force an apology, we give the impression that lying is okay, but opinion is not. It's okay to have someone else's opinion, and good for Natasha for not apologizing. I don't even know what she said, but good for her.
It was very. I mean, I heard it and I didn't really get outraged, but I don't get outraged at anything. But yeah, I'll be one of those people that just apologizes real quick. Just, I'm so painfully sorry.
My like marketing thing now, and has been for the last 6-7 years, is comedy without apology.
Really?
And the basic idea is, I've thought about the words I say. I've thought about this ahead of time.
It's fucking dangerous, though, because I don't think half the time when I speak. I literally don't think. I mean, that's part of the...
But that's because you're naturally funny. That's because you could just talk and it could be funny. Like, for me, I got to write ahead of time.
My best moments are when I'm not thinking and my mouth's just going. Yeah. And I say things.
Just happens.
And I'm like, woo! Even I say, I can't believe I said that. But then you say it, but in that...
And we all have that. It's that
confidence of not giving a fuck. I've lost it a tad bit, in the sense that as I've gotten older, I don't know. I did a casino last night.
Yeah.
No, two nights ago, and I found my act has gotten very kind of like regimented, and like I end up having to tell like 3 stories, and that's like at least 30 minutes of my act.
Yeah, because people expect it. Or...
Yeah, and I only have like 15 minutes to fuck around.
Yeah.
And the fucking around is so good that I feel like I slow down the show for my stories. I got to find a way to do stand up again. I need to get back on stage.
There's a gig in Athens if you want. So.
Dude, I'll tell you that story later.
Yeah.
I've talked about it before. I'll talk about it when Eddie F does a podcast.
Yeah.
But that was the...
Was that the Georgia Theater that they did?
Georgia Theater. And that was a case of me not thinking at all before I made a joke, and literally taking chances that nowadays, this is pre-cell phone cameras, nowadays definitely get you fired. Definitely get you fired. You have to apologize. I would take chances all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Like, I took chances that literally, that was the beauty of comedy then, and now it's like, I mean, I notice when I go on stage, 10% of the room is videotaping.
Yeah,
and so
I always try to stop them. I used to
try to stop them. I used to ask them not to. You can't. You just go, hey man, they want it. A lot of times they want it, and they want it to hopefully that some fucking guy charges the stage and punches you, or maybe you slip up and you say something you won't. But that's part of the thing of being a professional comedian is you go. I've done this a lot. I can promise you, I'm never going to say the N-word on stage. I don't say it talking to you in my man cave. I won't say it when the mics are off, only because that word, if it gets on your tongue, then it comes out.
He says it when the mics are off.
You have black sisters.
I have one black sister.
Oh my god. My god.
Which is part of why I thought the whole like the Romney thing was ridiculous, because like my sister and I joke around all the time. Like, I used to say shit to her. Like, I used to say like, be careful, we kept the receipt. You know, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then she's adopted. If people couldn't figure that out by
Steve
the idea
is literally like whiter than powder.
That's who
if you throw him into a mud puddle, lightning strikes you.
Powder is who I was compared to in high school. I had a great high school experience. And so
can I tell you a secret right now?
Yeah.
So I've never laughed so hard in my life.
Yeah.
And I hope to God you find this as funny as I do.
Okay.
Because we were doing that virtual. I just remembered this.
Yeah.
There's two things on that virtual comedy tour that made me laugh really hard. First of all, I want to say Ben Glebe brought marijuana, and I don't know. This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
I think I had just had one kid.
Yeah.
And we got high on that ride to Athens, and we listened to Ben Glebe's comedy album. I don't know if you can still get it, but the album sucks. His stand-up sucks. Don't buy it for the album. There is a bonus track on there where he is high trying to tell his friends that he fucked Kohanga from Boy Meets World.
Oh, Topanga?
Topanga?
Yeah.
And it is so funny because he can't get through the story because he's so high and laughing. That is one part. The other part is I made some joke and then someone said, Steve's sister's black. And I think at the time Napoleon Dynamite had just come out.
Yeah.
And all I could imagine was, and in the car we were doing this, was that your sister was like a 370-pound black woman, and you were you, and she, and that they adopted her, and then she ran the house. So we were having to go, hey, Steve Hofstetter, get in here, we thought we could not stop laughing at your sister calling you Steve Hofstetter. It's like, hey, Steve Hofstetter, and then I think I saw a picture of your sister, and I was totally let down.
She modeled for a little bit. Like,
I was so let down.
Very thin woman.
But we laughed so fucking hard in that car.
Yeah.
And Marshall, who is, I would say, has been a friend of yours from that day till.
I've known Marshall. Marshall's one of the earliest friends in comedy. I've known him since I think 2003.
And Marshall's also extremely, like, Marshall doesn't. He was protecting you, and which made it even funnier because Ben and Eddie Ift kept doing the character.
Yeah.
And I think I was your sister and Ben was you.
That's hilarious.
And we could not.
I would have been dying laughing, by the way, when that was happening.
That's where I got the black name. I said, they said, what's her name? I said, her name's Licorice Hofstetter.
Licorice Hofstetter? My God.
Ben would be like, Licorice, what do you want? I want shrimp and grits, Steve Hofstetter. Tell Mama to make them, Mother. No, tell Mama to make. It was so much fucking fun.
I'm going to make sure she listens to this, by the way.
We laughed so hard, and it was like, there was but it was just this visual.
This is actually amazing timing. She's getting married today, by the way.
Are you serious?
Well, she's having two weddings. This is the small family in New York wedding, and then she's getting married in Turks and Caicos. And I'm like, I want to come to the one in Turks and Caicos.
Yeah, good call.
You can have everyone else get married.
Enjoy
in 10
New York
degrees.
right now.
Yeah, exactly. I hear it's lovely at this time.
So what's your sister do?
So she's one of the managers at Nobu.
Really?
Nobu 57 in New York. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So so she does. She kind of runs the floor there.
That's great.
Which was fun to go there and get $300 of sushi for like $100.
So wait, what was it like having almost like a minority in the house of what I'd assume were very white people? I can't imagine your parents.
Well, we were also being Jewish. She was the minority in the minorities. So, we grew up in Briarwood, Queens,
I thought you
which
grew up
is
in
part
Arizona
of
for some reason.
No, oh God, no! I hate that fucking place. Not the whole state, just most of the people who live in it. There are good people everywhere.
Yeah,
there's just a lot of people's great grandmothers moved to Arizona. So one of the things I was saying before is that we were like, I would tease her for being adopted. I was a kid, and then she's hilarious. She would tease me for not being adopted. Like, she would be like, "Look at our family. You have these genes. Like, you can't escape this." And meanwhile, our mother, who had no sense of humor, would be like, "You should love each other." I'm like, "This is how we love each other. This is how." And so be like, "Steve Hofstetter, you're not adopted." That's exactly how she would say it. So. It was, Jamaica and Briarwood especially Briarwood is incredibly diverse. It's the most diverse part of Queens, which is the most diverse county in the country. And it used to be like United Nations housing. Like Parkway Village was founded for United Nations kids, and then it just became low income housing. And so there were, most of my friends growing up, I had a group of like six. There was like six of us, and it was like two white Jewish kids, a Mexican kid, a Chinese kid, and a Korean kid. Did I count to six?
What did they call you guys?
Oh, and an Indian kid.
The mathletes?
Yeah, it was the mathletes. They didn't call us. That's what happened.
It's like a tell joke. They call us the unfuckables.
Yeah, that's what it was. And so yeah, everything was super diverse, so I was just kind of used to it. It was just like, yeah, there's a black person in my family. There's tons of everybody in my, the kind of names I had to learn when I was 6 for my classmates.
Yeah.
I've known the name Prasanth for a very long time.
It's a beautiful fucking name. Dude or chick?
There's both. There was I knew a Prasanth. My friend Amal's crush was named Velen. Like, it just, I mean, these were, it was just, that's how it worked.
Dude, I think that is the thing that needs to be understood when you talk about race in America.
Yeah.
It's simply experiencing diversity.
Yes.
And a lot of people, and I'll say Florida aggressively, I didn't experience diversity at all.
Yeah.
I knew Cuban kids, I knew white kids, and we had one black kid that we hung out with.
Yeah.
Every group of mine had one black kid. In our neighborhood, it was Chris Colvin. At school, it was Kari Brown. At baseball, it was Andre Kerwin. Like, there was one black kid.
Yeah.
And so, but it was all Cuban kids and white kids. So there was no diversity. I didn't know any Asian people. I had a joke about Asian people in LA that was so honest. I was embarrassed about it until I realized, oh, maybe a lot of people feel that way. Like, I didn't know Japanese and Chinese people couldn't understand each other.
You really didn't
I swear to you on my children. I learned it with.
You're just like, they're like Americans and Canadians. It's,
I thought it was like a New York and Boston. Like, hey, Peckerhead, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were different languages.
Yeah.
So, like, when I found that
I
out,
thought it was like an accent.
I thought it was an accent or a dialect. Like, I remember the joke was when I've told it so many different ways now. The real story was I was with Dr. Ken.
Yeah.
And there was a Japanese person trying to get into the club, and I said, and he was really upset, and I looked at Ken and I go, what's he saying? And Ken goes, I don't know. I said, why not? And he goes, because I'm not Japanese. I go, what? He goes, I'm not fucking Japanese. I go, you can tell he's Japanese? And he's like, yeah, you can't. I was like, no, it's not like he has a Rising Sun bandana on. How the fuck am I supposed to know? And then I go, well, kind of, what's he saying? He goes, what do you mean kind of? I go, kind of. Can you pick up some words? And he's like, no, I don't speak the language at all.
That's hilarious.
And so, and then I took it on stage at night, and I was like appalled that, it was so true. So I didn't know diversity.
But that's also a self-deprecating joke. That's a joke about your lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
And there's also, I've always been fascinated about the idea of like, oh yeah, they could tell the difference between, a Chinese person and a Japanese person, and white people can't. I could most of the time tell what state someone's from.
I can too.
I used to play that game.
Although I did guess you're from Arizona.
Well, that's true.
And you look so not Arizona.
But there's also, I got to get a haircut. But there's also, I think it's different as you get older and as you travel more because you kind of absorb different cultures. But when I was in high school, I did this, high school journalism conference thing because it was in New York and it was free. So I went, and it was so much fun because the states were on the name tags, but you couldn't see that from far away. So I would just be sitting there with my other buddies, just being like, Michigan, Missouri, oh, that's Utah. And I'd say probably 60-70% of the time we were right.
You get really good at that. I could tell European dudes quick.
Oh,
just
yeah,
by
yeah,
their shoes. They always wear like racing shoes.
Yeah.
Like the
and like bright colors
shoes.
too.
Yeah, and everything's like,
it's just I
go a size up on that.
Yeah, what's okay culturally.
Yeah.
There's certain haircuts. That helps me with being identifying someone as like Japanese. There's certain haircuts that are very fashionable in Japan that aren't in other parts of the world.
You can tell Japanese people from Japan when they're here.
Yeah.
Like, LA's a little different because it's like
no one from here is from here.
Right.
So it's definitely tougher. But yeah, growing up in that environment, that taught me to be able to joke about race without there being any hate, without it coming from a bad place, because I knew what pushed the line. I knew what crossed the line because and I don't want to be like some of my best friends are. It was like, no, everyone I knew was. Yeah. There's a big difference.
And you're also taking it from the other side because you do represent white people in general to them. So you'll get it. So you learn to give it and get it. It's interesting. Now wait, so just to track back to your career, because you're someone who's consistently worked. I don't think you've ever not been working.
Yeah, I used to tour 300 days a year, and it was just one of those things where I realized during that whole controversy, and I don't know, and fill me in if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've done anything particularly controversial since. It's possible.
No, your name was brought up at Montreal.
Oh yeah. Well, that was.
I heard that. I don't remember what the context was.
Oh, that was.
I was like, fucking Hofstetter's back in the mix.
That was actually hilarious. I kind of like that because, you know, for me to be the butt of a joke.
What was the joke? Do you remember it?
Yeah. Do I remember it? Yeah. Do I remember when I was made fun of in front of the entire comedy industry? Yeah. Let me see if I recall. Let me check my notes. It was Andy Kindler was trashing Corolla. I've been a big supporter of what Corolla does for a while, for the last year or two, of just, you know, I love the pirate ship that he's built. You know, I love the idea of, you know, clearly to me, you know me enough to know that, you know, I love the idea of fuck the establishment. We don't need them. Let's do it our way and people will come to us.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of crowdfunding also, because what crowdfunding does, it gives fans a unique experience while also creating a product that is completely uncensored, which, you know, that both things appeal to me. And some people have this ridiculous idea that crowdfunding is about taking advantage of people. And like, no, it's not. It's offering them things they wouldn't get otherwise. Everyone's thrilled when they're like, wait, I can get Adam Carolla to come into my house? Of course I'll pay $2,000 for this. Yeah. Someone's a big fan. Why wouldn't they? And so I was very much promoting that movie and promoting the whole crowdfunding idea. And also, I'm going to be in the movie, and it's my first feature film. So why the fuck would I not promote that?
Yeah.
You know, I'm thrilled to be involved in this thing. And so he, in the State of the Union address, Kindler, who I had actually had, I thought, a pretty good relationship with. So I was surprised at this.
I can't remember if it... Yeah, keep going.
So first he made fun of me for offering shitty gigs, which is hilarious because the last gig that I offered Kindler was like an $8,000 gig for some synagogue in Seattle. Yeah. So yeah, oh yeah, terrible money.
I bet he'd
terrible
murder
money
in a synagogue.
So he would.
I bet
he would. Now it didn't work out, but that's my point. Like, yeah, I've also offered people $50 to play a firehouse, but that's for the level of a comic who only makes 40 usually.
Yeah.
And is thrilled to get the 50.
Yeah.
You know? And the idea of people getting offended with this gig pays too little for you. Yeah. You know, there are comics who are getting paid nothing right now who need this.
Yeah.
And you know, and these are the gigs that we all were thrilled at one point in our career, so get off your fucking high horse. So he made fun of me for that, and then he made fun of me for sending an email to comedians supporting the movie and telling people to submit, because there are 3 parts that are open for submission for comedians. And they're not looking for necessarily the most seasoned comedian, so anyone can submit. They're casting a movie. So someone who's an open micer who fits this part could have a tremendous exposure, and that could be a game changer for them. Yeah. And so he got on me for that. And so I twittered back to him, because I'm not one to just be like, okay, sure, yeah, go ahead, yeah, just make fun of me. And I actually thought it was cool to be made fun of in front of the entire industry, because that means they all know who I am.
Yeah, it's trust me. I was at one point I was hoping he'd bring my name up.
Yeah,
everyone does. It's like in a roast, you want to hear your name get brought up, and when you hear Bert Kreischer, you're like, I'm getting chills. I'm real.
This is me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I figured, you know, he's doing it to be funny. I'd have a sense of humor about it too.
Yeah.
So I wrote on my Twitter. I said, I don't care what you think of me. I am still a huge fan of your work as Chancellor Tootie Tootie in Wizards of Waverly Place. Basically saying, like, don't pretend to be the arbiter of what's selling out.
Yeah.
You know, you take Disney money. A lot of it. So then he wrote back and was like, now try a clever put down. And so I was like, all right, I'm a writer. Don't fuck with me. You know, like it was hilarious to me because I'm like, wait. You were just making fun of all of us. So now that I make fun of you, I'm being a dick? Well, here we go. So I wrote a bunch of stuff. One, I wrote, you know, Andy Kindler's career is going well, when I told him I was a fan and he knew I was immediately being sarcastic. And then I said, and this, I don't know if you'll get it because it's a Jewish joke, but I said, Andy Kindler is so bitter at a Passover Seder, he just has regular herbs. Because at a Seder, you have to have bitter herbs.
Oh, really?
That's part of it, yeah.
Okay.
And then I ended it by saying, you know, this was fun. You know, it's all out of love. I still remain a fan of both of your jokes. And so that was something where, and then he kind of took a little bit, and I wrote back and I was like, dude, I'm kidding. Big hugs. Like, just, we're fucking around, you know? Like if you take a shot at me, I'm going to take a shot at you, and we're going to have a good time with it.
I just met Andy Kindler for the first time, really, before he gave that speech, and I've always been. I don't think either of us are saying that we're not. I was always a huge fan of his because I just think he's one of those guys that we say that when we go, the comics that we love the most are the ones that you're like, fuck this, I'm taking it down.
Well, I just feel some of the best advice I ever got in comedy was something I misunderstood, and or a story I got wrong. Mark Maron, when Ben Morrison was first starting out, Maron did a show that he was producing by NYU, and from stage, kind of made fun of Ben a little bit, and the whole audience was Ben's friends. So he was like, oh, I can't make fun of Ben. I can't make fun of Ben. He goes, well, let me tell you something, Ben. You're not going to be truly great until all your heroes make you cry. Now, when Ben told me that story over the years, I had forgotten a little bit, and I somehow got it in my head of till all your heroes are dead. That was how I had it in my head.
That's interesting.
And eventually I talked to Ben about it, and he told me the real story. But what I still take that advice that Mark didn't quite say as the real advice, because what that means to me is when you elevate someone as hero status, you can never achieve what they've achieved because they're in front of you.
That's interesting. I took it the opposite, but the advice that you saw is actually better.
Yeah. The idea of, as long as you elevate someone to hero, you can't elevate yourself. And so when that thing with Kindler happened, I was able to check one more off the list. When the thing with Lewis Black happened, I was able to check one more off the list of, all right, these are no longer people that I need to worship. These are people who are human beings and who I disagree with, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it was just, one more step toward independence as a comic.
It was interesting because I think you got clumped in to the Corolla tirade that he was on. And
Sure.
He was like, I don't know what happened.
I sent the email the day before, and it got forwarded to him. I didn't even send it to him.
Yeah. I don't know what Corolla did to him, but man, he really...
Well, Corolla had a show that Kindler bombed on twice, so that was really mean of Corolla to do.
Is that...
Yeah, to have a show that Kindler couldn't be funny on is really, really mean. To that,
By the way, I would pay money to watch, and I know that Andy Kindler probably doesn't assume this, but in my opinion, watching Andy Kindler do good or bad is the same for me. I enjoy watch. It's like the same with Norton.
Yeah,
I like when a comic that I enjoy watching is not having the dream set.
Yeah,
because it's more like watching Houdini get out of the fucking straitjacket, and it's taking him more time, and the box fell in the water.
Well, Kindler didn't do well on Corolla's show 2 separate times.
Really?
And and that was something that and I don't know where this comes from. I don't know what. And every year he makes fun of someone. This was the first year, and I read the text of the speech every time. I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
But every year it's been light and in fun. This was the first year that he was really like, man, fuck this guy. And then when people were tweeting stuff at him about how bad Corolla was, he would retweet it. Not even jokes.
Yeah.
Just straight up like mean things. And so that's why I took it as oh, this is real. And by the way I found out I was in the speech, I was just reading an article about Montreal.
Really?
No one, I didn't. Which is strange. I would have figured someone would have texted me, but which I guess is another compliment because people didn't figure it was big news. People just figured like, oh yeah, he's making fun of Steve. But I was reading an article and it mentioned it as one of the things, and I was like, holy shit, that's what the fuck. And I was like, I gotta find the text of this speech.
No, what happened with that movie? Did you guys shoot it yet?
No. I think it starts shooting probably in like a month or two. They're still doing all the production stuff on it. Okay. And I might have a line or two in it. I'm not here being like, so when are we going to shoot, guys? You know, I'm just like, call me when it's ready. But I was just on his show recently, and he's been nothing but wonderful to me. Corolla.
Oh, okay.
He's been nothing but wonderful to me, and I really do admire what he does. And I don't agree with everything he says, but I like a lot of it, and I love the way he says it.
It's interesting because Corolla, and I don't really know much of his work. Only because him and Jimmy, who, by the way, neither of them have ever been bad to me, but I just knew they didn't like me at a very early age.
Okay.
Because I did a show that was competing with the Man Show called The X Show, and I just got hired on it but they hated anything that had to do with that show because apparently that premise was stolen from them.
Yeah, if people...
They're valid reasons to dislike anyone associated with that.
Right.
I get it, so I have no real rebuttal, but in my head I was like, I just got fucking hired 2 years into the show's run.
Well, yeah, I mean, and if you were to hash that out with them, I'm sure it'd be perfectly fine.
I don't think... I can't imagine, and I know Kimmel said... I'm sure this is real, but Kimmel said on Marin that he holds grudges forever and he never forgives or something.
I don't think that, I actually think that...
I heard it. All I heard it was like, oh, great, that's me. But I've done stand-up on his show. He was nice enough to let me do stand-up on his show.
He coughed under his breath and said, Kreischer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the way every comic hears it.
Exactly.
I'm sure they don't have any beef with me. But I would say, and I just don't listen to Carolla's podcast much, only because I know that my name's come up a couple times where people have started slamming me, and I don't buy.
I have not heard that happen.
It's some guy that does his show doesn't like me, and
do you know who it is?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Off air. You want to tell me?
Yeah, I'll tell you off air.
Yeah. I've never heard it happen.
Yeah, and so but Carolla does have kind of like the same. I would venture to say the same fan base that maybe Larry the Cable Guy has, like the same type of people that like Carolla.
I would disagree with that. I think that Carolla's politics can be toward the right, but he talks. There's a lot that he talks about. In terms of I don't disagree I don't agree with.
Let's just say
that political.
Let's just say I'm saying they probably find the same material humorous. And they're very fervent fans, and
I don't know. I mean, the people who have yes, there are bottom of the barrel people who.
Oh, I'm not saying they're bottom of the barrel. I'm saying that
I'm saying there are some, but when people, ever since I did the show, I can't do a live stand-up show without someone coming up to me and saying, "Hey, I heard you on Carolla."
Yeah,
and those people have been the same demo that I would have normally.
Really?
Which is, forward-thinking, progressive. I mean...
Oh, I never thought of...
He's a complainer. People like, complainers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's... The big difference is that, with the Dan Whitney or with the Larry the Cable Guy school of thought, because it's not Dan Whitney for that. It's, it's Larry. It's a very, isn't this silly? Whereas Carolla's approach is a lot more of we got to get in there, we got to fix this shit, we got to, so that appeals to, I think, a different brain.
Yeah, I think you're right. I take that back, I guess. I know
what you're saying. There is a scumbag element to any radio personality.
No, I wasn't.
Believe.
I don't think
except Dan Savage.
I don't think Carolla's got a scumbag approach, but I think
no, not him. I mean his fans. I mean there are people.
I'll say this.
Yeah,
I think that
like Stern.
That's my point.
Yeah.
I think the people that like Stern, the people like Opie and Anthony, the people that like Carolla, the people that like Joe, there is this kind of cult mentality that the fans acquire that is the same thing that maybe Larry the Cable Guy has.
All right, I'll give you that, but I do think that there is a big difference. And if you listen to his stuff, he's brilliant. He's so quick. He's so...
Dude, I used to listen to him on Loveline.
Yeah.
My fucking... Hands down... the quickest human being, to the point where I was like, I just want to sit in a room with this guy.
Yeah.
This guy fucking is so goddamn quick. And then when I did Loveline for the first time, I was like, oh my God, the idea that I'm sitting in the seat that he sat in, I was like, this is mind blowing. He really is one of the fucking fastest. Me and my buddy Lorenzo would sit in Lorenzo's car and drop off headshots, because that's what Lorenzo did.
Yeah.
And drive back and take the long way.
I thought you just meant at diners, as if I've eaten here.
He was a photographer, so he had to drop his proofs off by 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
So he'd drop his proofs off. This is back when you shot film. And we would take the long way home and listen to fucking Loveline. It was that fucking good. But I haven't listened to the show, and so I don't really have a. But I do think the fervent kind of dude following.
Well, there is that, but there's also, the people who are calling during my episode, one was a computer programmer, and one was there's a lot of forward thinking who do listen to the show, and I think that there's a lot he said that's been misunderstood.
Yeah.
The thing he said about when people are he said that women aren't funny. It's no, the headline writer said that. The headline writer of the story said that. He didn't say that. Some dick who's getting paid, $10 an hour to write copy, like that's who wrote it. Whereas what he said, when asked, do you think men are funnier or women are funnier? He basically said, I think I think on average men are funnier. I think it's easier to find a funny man. There are funny women, but I think there are more funny men. And if you were to choose between one of the two, which he was asked to do, he didn't just come out and be like, just so you know, fuck these bitches. Like, that's not what happened. And it was funny because when I was promoting the movie, I would find that where people would be like, female comics would write back, be like, well, he's not going to put me in the movie because he hates women. And I go, his co-host is female, right?
Allison Rosen's one of my favorite human beings. I've done her podcast, and I've had her on my podcast. I fucking love her.
Yeah.
She is amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, point being that I took a lot of shit from that, and that's fine. Yeah. And, I find that most of the time the comics who don't like me are the comics that I don't hire. And that's really what it breaks down to. I have comedy clubs. I have stages I control.
I'm doing one of your comedy clubs
tours.
soon.
You are. You're doing Morty's. I just bought Caravan in Louisville. I want you there too.
Yeah, I'd love to.
We'll figure that out. Yeah, you'll like Morty's.
Everyone's told me how great Morty's is, and I think I'm doing it. I want to say I'm doing it like the week before my book comes out.
Oh, excellent. Well,
I'm going to rack your brain about marketing ideas for my book.
Oh, hell yeah.
So if you have any ideas...
I'm not very good at that stuff.
Shut up. Shut the fuck up.
Well, I mean, that's where a lot of the party lines are. Like, I've found comics who submitted to a club that I've then passed on, and they'll send me, like, just a vitriolic email about how shitty of a human being I am. I'm like, well, if you thought that, why did you apply for this work? Or are you saying that because I didn't give you work? Would I have made myself a nice person if I paid you money? Yeah. Would that have, and now who's the fucking sellout? Like, the idea that, and again, it goes back to binary. And I love comedians. They're my favorite people. And I hate comedians. Because the comedians that understand that this business is about having a good time and enjoying yourself and making a difference and being original. I am describing you, Bert. I've always liked you, know? That was one of those things where you were the only one on that tour that I didn't know ahead of time. And Marshall called me up, was like, I've got a guy who'd be a perfect fit for this. And that's when we started talking. And immediately I was like, I like this guy a lot.
Yeah.
Because you were always someone who was just enjoying himself and you weren't caught up in the bullshit. You know?
It's a blessing and a curse. I don't get caught up in the bullshit. I don't really think negatively of a lot of people. So I always think I want everyone to be my friend. I want everyone to like me. And I just want to have a good time, but then then people just think you're disingenuous.
Well, like, I would love everyone to like me, and
I want everyone to like me.
It would be very enjoyable.
I want Adam Carolla to call me right now and go, I've been a big fan for a long time. I wish that I could have told people this, but I can't.
Yeah, I just can't say it.
I can't say it. It's hard. I love you.
Yeah.
I really would love to have Larry the Cable Guy on the podcast. I'd love for you and Larry Cable the Guy to meet.
I would. The only time we've ever interacted at all, and from what I understand from people in his camp, when it first came out, he thought it was funny. He thought it was, same way you get roasted. Great. Yeah. And then the second week, it outsold his. And then he didn't find it funny anymore.
Really?
Just 1 week. And, he's sold, millions and millions and millions of copies. But that week, he was in the top 20 the week it came out, and I was 22. And then I went up to number 20, and he went down to like 26 or something. And that's when it stopped being funny. Because that made... and I think that's true for the human being. I mean, that makes you realize, holy shit, a lot of people agree with this. This isn't just one guy making fun of me. This is a lot of human beings saying, we don't like you. And that's going to hurt someone's ego. The only time we ever interacted on the Kid Chris show in Philly, where we both got sandbagged, which I can't complain about because I thought I was sandbagging him. I thought I was sandbagging him, so I can't complain that they fucked me too. But basically, they called me up. They said we have to interview him.
By the way, I know Kid Chris, and I'm enjoying this so much more.
Oh really?
Oh yeah. I met him. I did a show. He was in Cincinnati now, I think. and I did a show in Cincinnati. I had a fucking really good time, but I was excited to meet him because I'd known who he was for a while. So keep going.
Well, I only know this side of him. They called me and they said, hey, we're forced to have him on the show because he's a big star and he's doing press for his movie. Because my album, with no knowledge at all, album dates get set 6 months ahead of time.
Yeah.
My album came out the same week as his movie.
What movie?
As Health Inspector. Larry the Cable Guy, Health Inspector.
Okay.
So in every review of his movie, they panned it and talked about my album.
Really?
Yeah. Which is part of, I think, what pissed him off. But he couldn't do an interview for years without someone bringing it up to him. Because this was a big deal. There was an article in the New Yorker where they asked him about it. And he said I was just being mean, and his manager said that I was trying to make a quick buck. So I wrote in, and I said, why doesn't he fly his private jet over to my one-bedroom apartment, and we can talk about who's trying to make a quick buck? And that was the last I heard. But so the Kid Chris show, they had to have him on, and so they called me up, and they said, hey, we'd love you to take him to task. We can't, or we'll get in trouble. But we got your back. And, let's do this. And I was like, okay. So they interview him, and then they ask him about my album, and he's like, I don't really want to talk about that, or, whatever fake accent he used. And they said, well, we've got Steve Hofstetter on the line. Steve, is there anything you want to say to him? And just, left me out to fucking dry. This is all you, Steve. Because before they brought me on, they basically, apologized to him. And they were like, we've given you some shit, but we actually kind of like what you're doing and good for you and blah, blah, blah. So now I'm the only dick.
Steve Hofstetter's spitting blood over here. You ready, Steve?
Yeah, exactly.
Get him.
Yeah. And so I asked him, I said, how does it feel to go from satire to validation? And he said, he actually started off with Get Her Done. He started off by saying that. And then he told me, he kind of brushed off my question. And then I said, well, Bill Hicks had a great quote about comedy where he said, the comedian is the guy who says, wait a minute, as the consensus forms, and you're building the consensus. So, I'm just curious what you think about that. And he was like, well, I knew Bill Hicks, and I want to be like, no. Dan Whitney knew Bill Hicks. Bill died long before you ever did this. I wanted to say all that, but I couldn't because he just kept talking. And then, I kept trying, and it was fucking nothing. And then at the end of it, he said, get her done, and hung up. And that was it. He bookended the conversation by saying, get her done on both sides.
Sounds like my wife.
And that was...
I swear to God.
Oh, I hope you're less attracted to him.
No, I've never really had an interaction with him. I've eaten his potato chips. I've worked the Omaha Funny Bone.
Yeah.
He sent me a message saying, next time in Omaha, he'd love to hang out or meet. And I was like, fuck yeah.
I would love to sit down with him, and I
don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's a regular
The first
dude.
thing I would do if I sat down with him, the first thing I would say is, I'm sorry. Really? I'm not sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for any pain it may have caused him.
Well, I think as a comic, you also go, that's the one thing you go, it's so fucking hard to get successful. And people I'll defend him in this sense. People go, with the Dan Whitney versus Larry the Cable Guy.
Yeah.
That was happening at a different stage in comedy when you could be Hamburger Jones and that sold tickets. I'm not shitting on Hamburger Jones or Larry, but I'm saying that's how it worked. You'd call radio stations as a character, and then you could make money as that character.
Hamburger Hofstetter, by the way, never took off, which is very frustrating because Hofstetter is a German name. Hamburg, Germany. I would have figured it'd be a natural fit.
But you look at the majority of black comics. I mean, Damn Fool is a very funny comic, but he's got a name and a persona. Bruce.
I always joke around that I never hire anyone at my clubs without a last name.
I worked with a guy named Alabama, and
there's a comic in Atlanta called Food Stamp.
Food Stamp?
Food Stamp.
I bet I could guess what his first joke's about. But
Stamp collecting?
But I'm not talking shit about Food Stamp, because let me tell you something. If someone tells me Food Stamp could kick my ass.
Yeah.
But I worked with a comic in Florida named Wode.
Yeah.
And so there is that style of comedy, and it could be argued this far in that,
Yeah, and there's, Cedric the Entertainer is an example of someone who, I joke about that last name thing. I would happily consider the Entertainer his last name, but I do understand what you're saying, but there's also, I'm not a fan of hackery in any regard.
Okay.
And there's something in comedy I refer to as blahack, which is just BLHACK.
Black.
Which is the concept of the beat your kids. What? Come on, say something new. There are half of the most brilliant comics that exist have been black comics. You know, the legacy of prior Dick Gregory, who I get to open for this summer, by the way. Oh. Great thing about owning clubs. So I get to drive with him from Louisville to Indy. And my dad's a huge Dick Gregory fan, so I'm flying him out to do it with us. Oh, wow. So to put my dad in the car for 2 hours. My dad saw him when he was an undergrad at Queens College. So, which was short-lived because he never graduated. So it was a short amount of time. I was like, that's got to be a brief window, isn't it? So
was that in the fall?
Yeah, exactly. Which class was that during? So the idea of hackery, there's brilliance from any group of comics. You know, there are brilliant Latino comics. You know, you don't have to do the whole, set up in English, punchline in Spanish. You don't have to do like that pattern. You can break free of that. You know, there's hackery for white comics. There's hackery because we run a couple comedy festivals. And the thing I always say in all the emails beforehand when I talk to the comics about what material, because everybody's like, oh, what should I do? There's industry. And I say, okay, we know that men and women are different. We understand that masturbation can make you sad, and we know that pot makes you hungry. And we're fucking tired of it. Yeah. We're tired of it. We want to hear something new. We want to hear what makes you a human being. And that's what makes you a comic. At least I think so.
Now, what about this theory?
Yeah.
What about, because, and I'm only trying to figure this out, but like, what if you were told that if you simply had more prominent horn-rimmed glasses, your point could come across clearer? So you'd have to, before every show, throw on these stage glasses. But you noticed that when you did it, you fucking destroyed like you'd never, because all of a sudden all your points were a tad bit clearer.
Okay.
Because you do see that in the alternative scene a lot.
Yeah.
You see people putting on a little bit of a costume. Like well, these are my New Balance sneakers and I got my sweat coat. It is theoretically.
I don't have a problem with a character. I don't have a problem with people doing a character.
But what if, like, that's
Mudbone was a character.
What?
Mudbone was a Richard Pryor character.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And I don't have a problem with people being an exaggerated version of themselves. I mean, Hedberg on stage was a character. I always wondered
if it wasn't.
He was a bit like that. I didn't know him personally.
Yeah, I didn't.
This is just from a friend of mine opened for him a lot. And he was somewhat like that. One of my favorite stories about him was that this security guard kept coming up to bug their hotel room. And finally he just goes, how much would it take for you to go away? Yeah. Like, just a very, Hedberg cadence. Like, that's how he talked. But, I think a lot of us are exaggerated versions of ourselves. For me, the character just needs to be honest. That's what appeals to me about comedy. And Hedberg's, one of my favorites. But I understand what you're saying. And in fact, Marshall Childs was someone who helped determine the way I do dress on stage, and I do dress in real life. These glasses and that I've been wearing. Oh God, this is the same pair.
They're understated.
They're understated, but they're still me. They still fit me as a person, and it's not going to help the listener if I take them off right now to show you the difference. But for you to see, I mean, I come across very differently without these.
You look like you might be able to play basketball without the glasses.
I know, isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? I still need to do a haircut.
You do look, that's interesting. Just taking off your glasses, you looked more athletic.
Yeah, isn't that weird that it's the Superman Clark Kent thing? You make fun of it, but it's still, it's like, it does change a person. I also used to wear, shittier, cheaper glasses when I grew up, really poor and couldn't afford. And I was like, well, these are $20. That sounds good. So that includes the prescription. It's dangerous, probably, to pay that little for glasses and then drive an automobile.
Yeah.
So, he helped advise me of like, look, you've gotta dress like you speak, and you don't right now. And that was more of just I couldn't afford it. Yeah. And so I wear black on stage all the time, but I wear black every day. My closet, I've had comics joke with me that my closet must look like Superman's closet, and that it's just, hangers of the same outfit, because that's all I wear.
I thought you were going to say my closet must look like the Amistad.
It's the... Yes, only a lot of black things in my closet that are hung. So...
Oh, shit! I didn't
even take it that far? Fair enough. So, Licorice is going to be so offended. So, I find that you do need to encapsulate a persona on stage. You do need to dress, but you also need to respect the stage in that. I always make fun of the comics who will, show up in cargo shorts, and I'm like, was this summer camp? Like you're on a stage.
Yeah.
People paid money to see you, and I understand people aren't dressing up to see us anymore like they used to, but I think you do need to respect the stage to a degree. And I think going back to your original question, having a persona, I think, is fine. It's just understanding how that persona is being taken. If my jokes about, if my jokes about how, I do a bit where I tell a story about a girl in high school that my friend wanted to try to set me up with, and she never existed, and there was no, like, he just made her up, and there was no picture of her anywhere, and there was no blah blah, and I tell this whole story, and it's weird, and people are like, where's this going? And then at the end of it I go, and now that I finished telling that story, let's talk about God. And so if atheists were then to use that to persecute religious people, that's my fault, and I need to deal with that. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I had a joke about being in an airport bar and a black guy making a racist joke to me, and I thought, how cool is this that I think I've done a version of it since, but a black man and a white man can commit a hate crime together, and then I realized he was being racist, and I was like, what makes him think my racism stops at Middle Eastern people? Like, if I'm racist, what am I, a cafeteria racist? I pretty much hate everyone. Like,
like the idea, it was an anti-Middle Eastern joke.
It was an anti-Middle Eastern joke, and I laughed, and then I went, oh my God, I just laughed. What makes him think that? What if that was a test? What if it, like, now he knows feeler. Yeah, and I was just laughing because that's what you do when people tell you a racist joke. You just don't want to confront them and go, hey man, let's dial that shit back.
I've got to stop confronting.
Really?
I had a shuttle driver once in an airport.
Dude.
The second they find out you're a comic, holy shit. I try to hide it. I try not to tell them. There was one, and the most awkward part of this was that this was, years and years ago when I was single, and there was like this cute girl, and we were talking while waiting for the shuttle and getting along really well. And so then we're talking about, she's asking me about stand-up, so he overhears this and goes, oh, you're a comic? And I'm like, yeah. And so then he goes, oh, I got this great joke for you, and it's immediately racist. And I was like, hey, dude, that's not my thing. And then he goes, all right, well, one more. And the joke starts out, so these two spics, and I'm like, whoa, what the fuck, man? And meanwhile, now I'm in a fight with this guy.
Is he looking in the rearview mirror? What, are they in here?
Yeah, exactly. None of them are here, right? And so now I'm like in a fight with him, and suddenly the whole like casual flirtation vibe is completely gone.
See, what I do in those situations is someone tells me a racist joke.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't laugh.
Yeah.
Because I think that is kind of implicit.
Yeah, it's validation for them.
Yeah, and so I go, oh, okay. Like, I'll just give like a solid,
that's a thing that you did. You said words.
Like, I had someone very recently tell me about, they were going off on gay dudes and how gay dudes, that they just can't understand that. And like, and you want to tell me you were born that way? And in my head, I'm like, this is such a fucking loaded argument that I could literally convince
you. No. They chose to go through this.
Yeah, they chose it. And I'm in my head, and he's going on, and I'm just in the back like, this isn't my time to. I'm not going to change this guy. It was me and him in a car, and I just was like, yeah, that's it. I just kind of,
hey, you hungry at all? You want to stop for something? I'll join you in a second. You go ahead and just fucking floor it.
And I just was like, because all I can think is, I remember Patrice told me that I'm not saying that Patrice did this or thought this way or felt this way.
Yeah.
But I remember Patrice and I getting into an argument one time in Scotland about gay dudes choosing to be gay. And I remember saying to him, that's impossible, because that means that you could be talked into sucking a dick. And I think that's other comics' jokes.
Yeah.
And I'm almost certain that Nick Griffin has a joke very similar to that.
Yeah.
But I remember Patrice and I getting into that argument and going, no. Like, you could not talk me into being gay. Like, you couldn't trick me with a magic trick, like the dog whisperer. And I'm like,
or pay me, or yeah.
And so, but I just kind of blow it off, like, oh, yeah. But I think I'm got that frat boy meathead look where people believe that they're like, I know this guy. They read the audience wrong, and they look at me and they're like, you're gonna get this.
Meanwhile, I'm super active in my fraternity still, even to this day.
What fraternity?
SIGAP.
Oh, okay. ATO. I have a bunch of ATOs coming over here.
Oh yeah,
yeah. A bunch of ATOs and Lambda Kai's are coming over today for because we're all in town for the BCS game.
Oh, nice.
And so, and if you're listening to this, I'll post this. I will be in. I'll be in Paris when I post this, But so you will already know the outcome of the game. You'll know that I wasted $1,000,
or it was the greatest experience.
or it was the greatest $1,000 I've ever spent.
I got to go to an FSU game when I was working the zone in Tallahassee before it got frittered away.
What frittered away? What happened?
I think there was, I don't know if it was drugs or gambling or something was wrong.
Any business in Tallahassee's got to be a tough business to uphold.
Yeah. Well, but what was crazy? I mean, they were packing them in there. Like
really?
I actually had the attendance record, and then someone broke it, and then I broke it again because I was just, I play colleges a lot, so doing a gig in Tallahassee was pretty easy.
I can't. But I'm making a stereotype already.
Yeah.
But having gone to school in Tallahassee, and I'm not shitting on us.
Yeah.
But I know the mind frame.
I'm actually playing Tallahassee in a week.
Really?
I'm doing the Bradfordville Blues Club.
But like, who comes in? Is it like frat boys?
No. It's here's the
like
thing.
Theater students.
There's I mean, there's a combination, but at the same time, like I've always done well with the exception of the rule, which is why Louisville is a huge market for me. That's why Atlanta is a huge market for me. Bloomington, Indiana. It's the places where people want to get away from the ignorance around them. And so in a town like Tallahassee, yeah, there's a huge party mentality, but at the same time, there's a ton of people who just happen to go to school there who are like, I'm underserved right now.
Yeah,
and my entertainment options are underserved.
I would go there and serve the overserved.
Overserved in two definitions of the word.
I would find the lowest common denominator and hammer them until they were like, I love him talking about his dick.
Nice. I made the mistake of driving through Tallahassee once during A&M's homecoming. And I was going to stay in a hotel that night. I was just
rookie
going from
rookie mistake.
I think I was going from like Orlando to Pensacola or something, like whatever it was. But I was like, I'm just going to stay in Tallahassee.
Maybe I'll hit one of the bars, see if I can have a cocktail, meet someone.
And I drove through, and it wasn't even the homecoming people that scared me. It was the cops. I drove in, and on that like main strip, whatever it was,
Tennessee Street.
There were probably 3,000 police officers.
It is.
And I looked around and I go, if they need 3,000 police officers, I'm not getting out of my car.
It is intense. For those of you that don't know, what happens on FAMU homecoming weekend is literally, I want to say it's always an away game for Florida State.
Yeah.
And a lot of those kids will leave the city that weekend. And FAMU takes over the Florida State campus.
And it's not like, it's funny because
not just campus, but the bars, specifically Tennessee Street, is overrun. But it is just it's back. And this is back. I used to like back when Freaknik was big.
Yeah,
and it was like Freaknik in Tallahassee, and it's like turns into a party weekend.
It is such a party, and also like when you put that much police out there, you treat people like animals. They're going to act like animals.
Yeah,
and the same way that like the more and more you fence off baseball fields and you fence off arenas, the more people are going to act like animals in a cage.
Yeah,
because you're building that.
And I will say I never had a bad experience at FAMU weekend and FAMU homecoming, and I probably drove down Tennessee Street and was around there my whole college career. I never had one negative interaction with any of the people that went to FAMU ever. Actually, the total opposite. However, when you do see that place, when you see one race take over something, there's got this, like, be it Latino, Asian, there is this like,
or even white people. Like if you're imagine how scary it would be to be on vacation in like Thailand and then just see 20,000 white people descend.
20,000 Swedish people.
Yeah.
And you're just like, whoa.
Like something's wrong. Something's wrong.
Yeah. Like,
I don't know what's going to happen, but something's going to happen.
Go down to Bali and just see like 40,000 Australians, and you're like, oh God, I'm going to get punched.
Yeah.
Like that is the mentality, but that's interesting that you picked that weekend. That's almost.
I didn't pick it. My schedule picked it, and I was just passing through. But that's the cool thing about being a comic. You just see a whole bunch of shit all over the place. By the way, a story that I started telling, completely forgot, the whole idea of like people misinterpreting things as racist or as, I used to do a joke about an Arab cab driver that I had who was racist against black people, and he was telling us awful things about black people, and I was making fun of the idea that in this day and age, to have an Arab cab driver have the balls to be racist, to get pulled out of line at the airport being profiled and saying, I hate racism. The only thing I hate more than racism is black people.
Yeah.
That was the joke.
Yeah.
I tell that joke at a college, 500 students. One kid's not really listening. He hears me, in an accent also, hears me saying, the only thing I hate more than racism is black people. That's all he hears. He doesn't hear the 5 fucking minutes of setup where I talk about my sister, where I go through the whole thing about how much I hate racism, and he stands up wanting to fight me. And just like, man, I'm, like, fuck you, man, stop saying that shit. And I was like, dude, I'm on your side.
Yeah, you need to
I'm
listen.
telling people why not to be racist, and you're showing them why they should be. Like, you are undoing everything I've been trying to do up here. And, thank God there were 500 people that were with me. Otherwise, I would have gotten killed. But it was just a lot of people hear, they hear that with religion. The second I mention the word Jesus, oh, don't you talk about Jesus? I'm like, but what if I say I love him?
Well, there's very few comics that do that.
Yeah, that's true. Especially Jewish ones. We're not
that are like
huge fans.
Although I did see Rory Scovel do his bit that made me I was on the fucking floor.
Yeah,
we were in San Francisco at the Nob Hill Masonic Auditorium.
Yeah,
and he was doing this Christian comic bit. Like, I'm really proud of them for bringing in a Christian comic into a town like San Francisco where you guys are bathing in sin. Like, it was so that's not what he said, but that is the bit he did. And I loved it. Rory Scovel has my favorite joke, and I'm not even going to tell it because I want people to see it, but when he talks about abortion and he talks about the left versus the right, I've never laughed so fucking hard.
Rory is my biggest regret in comedy.
Why?
Because I've now owned Morty's for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And before that, I was booking other stuff and I was booking tours, and I've turned down thousands of comedians because I've had to. The way the math works, 52 weeks a year. There's nothing you can do. And there are a ton of comedians that I've turned down and said, you're not ready yet, that I've then worked with the following year or whatever it is. Rory is someone who came to us when he was transitioning between feature and headliner, which is right before he blew up. And that's how he pitched himself, which I think was which was his mistake, because that makes me think, okay, you're a feature who's trying to move up, that's not ready yet. And the clip wasn't great and didn't really reflect who he is as a comic. And I said, you know what? He's funny, but I just don't think he's there yet. And I was wrong. And I'm very proud of myself that's the only one I look at and go, man, was I wrong.
Yeah.
And, there are plenty others that I passed on that I'm like, yep, still pass. And there are plenty others that I passed on that I'm like, yeah, he's funny, but, so are a lot of people. Yeah. Rory is my biggest regret. And I've told him that. I sent him an email saying, you're fucking hilarious, you're awesome, and I'm so sorry I didn't see it as soon as everybody else.
That was a really amazing show that I was on, and Rory was one of my favorite people. I mean, everyone was my favorite. I loved every comic that was on that show. I laughed hysterically, but Rory had one joke that I hear the punchline in my head over and over again, and it's my favorite thing about comedy. Yeah. When you just hear the punchline over and over, and it just makes you laugh every time the same way because you hear them say it. I fucking love it. So what's on the horizons for you?
For Team Hofstetter?
I know you have a fucking goal list. I know you've got...
I'm not as methodical as some people think. I tend to throw a lot of pasta at the wall and just see what sticks.
I'll tell you why you're fun, is you are opinionated.
Thank you.
You're not afraid. Like, I'm definitely afraid to share opinions especially about people, only because I want everyone to like me. It's my flaw. Like, if we get drunk, I'll tell you what I fucking think about people. But especially in a forum like this, I get kind of,
yeah.
But I like that you're opinionated. You know where your viewpoint is. You're not scared of. You're fearless, especially when it comes to the business. And I think that is enjoyable to watch. Is like, I don't give a fuck. I'll do it my way. And you can judge me, and you can think one way, and you can think this, but I'm going to do it my way, because if I do it your way and I fail, I'll fucking resent it for the rest of my life.
Well, and thank you, and that's something that I heard that quote from Letterman told Seinfeld when he was preparing for Seinfeld, or the Seinfeld Chronicles, as it first was.
Yeah.
He said, "Do you have any advice?" And Letterman said, "Do it your way, because if you fail, you need to be able to live with yourself." And I learned a long time ago that people are not going to be happy unless they're part of something. And so people are always going to find reasons to tell me why I'm wrong and tell me why I suck and blah, blah, blah. And I just need to know I need to be a good person. I need to, some great advice is lead a good life so when you look back on it, you enjoy it a second time. And I've never conned anybody out of money. I am honest to the penny. I believe stealing a penny is the same thing as stealing $1 million.
Yeah.
It's a lack of trust. And I've had gigs cancel on comics that I booked them without notifying me, and I've paid the comic out of my pocket. Like, I will always do what I believe is right, and I believe that business is what you should do, not what you can do. Mm-hmm. And as long as I live that way, fuck it, there's nothing else you can do. And sometimes I'll have to cry myself to sleep and develop an eating disorder, but aside from that, I'm doing fine. And luckily, I have, a very supportive wife, and my dogs are incredibly supportive. As long as I keep feeding them, they're big fans. So what's next on my horizon?
You just bought the Comedy Caravan.
Bought Comedy Caravan in Louisville. We're renaming it to the Laughing Derby at Comedy Caravan because the Caravan brand has been a bit outdated. Its time has passed. It's a little bit stuck in the 80s.
Okay.
And a lot of neon colors, a lot of
I'll be there
like
for the
that.
Kentucky Derby this year.
Well, come by.
I will.
We'd be happy to have you.
Yeah.
So, that's something, and we're getting a lot bigger comics than they've been getting lately. As much as it was wonderful that they were giving a lot of features their first shot at headlining, let's get some guys who know what they're doing. The big thing I'm doing is, and obviously the other clubs, I'll plug them quickly. Laughing Devil in New York City, which 14 beers on tap and 45 seats. It's a really fucking fun place to watch a show.
Whoa, where is that?
Long Island City. So, which is not Long Island, and I fucking hate that it has the same name, but it's the corner of Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan. So it's one stop from Grand Central on the 7.
Really?
Yeah. So
was that little island?
No. It's one pad. That's Roosevelt Island. That's impossible to get to. That's a blight on New York. But I'm kidding. They're wonderful people. They're wonderful people. Just sometimes the train doesn't run there and you can't get home. So great place to live. Oh, but it's so affordable, and that's why. And they closed the bridge too. So no, it's basically just south of Astoria. It's one neighborhood south of Astoria. It's just north of Greenpoint, Williamsburg from Brooklyn. So it's in between all the hipsters. Room. It's a great room. Anytime you want to come when you're in New York, anytime you want, you let me know. Happy to have you.
Definitely. God, that would be fun as fuck.
Yeah, and it's a great room to just try shit.
Yeah.
Because, there's a lot of experimentation going on. It's 45 seats. So with 20 people, it's packed,
Yeah.
And obviously Morty's in Indianapolis as well, which you'll be at soon. But what's for me...
I want to fucking find my date.
Is... If I think it's like early summer, late spring.
It's right before my book comes out, so it's May.
Yeah.
I think it's before May, right before May.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll definitely have you. I mean, Bob and Tom is in Indy, so
I love Bob and Tom.
Hopefully do some press there. And the big thing for me, February 15th, shooting a TV special, crowdfunding it. So if anybody is into, it's called Ginger Kid. So if anybody enjoyed the last hour and a half or so, if you go to supportcomedy.com, that'll forward you right there, and kick in $1 or that buck's friends, or whatever you want to do. And
speaking of crowdfunding and bucks, I was gonna try to crowdfund me purchasing the Buccaneers.
Oh, that's hilarious!
Be real. Look, I'm not. I want to buy the Buccaneers, but I don't have $100 million.
I got involved with a group that tried to kind of do that with a sports team, because you can't actually. They're changing the laws now. You can actually do something where you can sell a product and you can buy shares of a product. But with crowdfunding right now, you can just buy experiences. The person actually owns the product. But they were trying to do this thing where they were trying to buy, start with a minor league team. But the idea is get people to donate in exchange for a vote. Like, you have a vote, and so it's a fan-run team.
Wow.
And
that's
so
not a bad
the
idea.
idea is that every major decision is just put to a vote. It's all online. You go, do we change the uniform color? Do we trade this guy? Blah blah blah, and just everybody votes, and whatever percentage wins.
I was thinking it'd be just great to maybe I could raise $100 million, buy the Bucks, and then go, guys, I'm gonna run this team into the ground. But it's gonna be just as fun watching the games as watching me fucking be the owner. Like, I will take it back to like we'll have a fucking bear in the middle of the field. We'll wrestle a bear. Like I will make these games so much fucking fun, and I will get out of control. I will definitely get out of control.
Can I just tell you how much I'm in? Like how, and I have a bit of marketing expertise.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's buy the Buccaneers.
Do you know how much
Bert, we're buying the Buccaneers.
fun that would be to watch? Like, well, the owner made the team play a scrimmage against just ridiculousness.
Can I coach?
Yeah. Just bring it. It would be like, and like my biggest thing, one of the things like life goals, and this is going to sound real low. I remember when I want to say maybe I was at Florida State or maybe I was right before I went to Florida State.
Yeah.
Bert Reynolds bought the Seminoles uniforms. He bought them a new uniform, and it was gold on gold. It was ridiculous. They looked like sunshine.
It looked like Burt Reynolds.
It looked ridiculous. But he bought it for them, and he made them wear it. It was like $1 million, and he bought them uniforms, and he made them wear them, and they wore them for one game, and it was like the Burt Reynolds uniform. I want to do that in my life so bad for Florida State.
To just
design a uniform and buy them, make them, and then send them in, and then they have to wear them. But I'm so famous, they have to wear them because I'm famous.
Yeah.
That's one of my goals.
Or because you also just built a new wing on the stadium.
Yeah.
I mean, there are...
Yeah, if I owned the Bucks, I would have ruffles on the sides of their... just really...
Make them actually look like pirates?
Yeah, make them look like pirates.
Everybody's got to play with an eye patch.
Long sleeves with those pirate sleeves and the ruffled front.
Can you have the offensive coordinator have a monkey on his shoulder, please?
Yeah,
just
have styrofoam swords.
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
It would be so great.
Their
shoes look like the patent leather buckled shoes. We get cleats that look like pirate cleats.
I've actually said many, many times that I believe
one white sock, one brown sock, so it looks like a peg leg.
A knee-high.
Do you know how much fun I'd be as a fucking owner? All I need is $100 million.
Well, we'll get
Probably
you there.
A little more.
I just raised about 10 for my special, so I can 10 grand, not 10 million. So.
I raised about I think 40 for my documentary.
Yeah.
And it's finally done. It should be coming out soon. I just don't know where or when. We had a screening in Tampa. For those of you that are dying to know where your money went, it's a movie. They're very difficult to fucking edit.
Yeah.
And so that should come out soon. But crowdfunding.
I have believed often that if I were put in charge of, like when the Twins were just losing so much money, and they were still good, like I believe I can run a baseball team better than half the owners that are there. And I don't just mean like fucking around, like making them wear pirate shit. I mean like, actually making them care about the fans. Yeah. Maybe encourage them to sign autographs every so often. Sell a few $1 million worth of tickets by giving people an incentive to go to the game, And so there's a lot of stuff I've always wanted to do that. And so the idea of this appeals to me so much.
We'll talk about it.
So much.
So you got your special coming out. You're shooting your special in February. You got the clubs. You're on tour. How many dates are you touring this year?
I've been touring mainly rock clubs. And so I do a lot with the hard rock. I'll usually do about, anywhere from 2 to 4 days a week. And then the rest I'm home, and I'm in LA writing, so I can't go on the road too much. I'm out there a lot, and what I love about rock venues is the people who come, they don't walk up. People come knowing that there's a show and knowing that I'm the one on the show. Yeah, and so my walkout ratio it
makes comedy very different.
Is a lot different because people are there rooting for me, and every now and then someone sees it advertised, or like if I do like a Groupon, some fucking hick will be like $5. I'll pay $5, and then ruin the show. But for the most part,
and I were talking about how nice it is to have people come to see your show who want to see your show.
It's amazing. It's a different world, and I can't sell out theaters yet, but I can do rock clubs. And
don't get me wrong, I love gaining it. Like that's one of the things I talked to Christina Pajinski and I talked about it, and we talked about the benefit that these funny bones and improvs have when maybe they don't give you the money that you feel like you're worth in some venues. In some markets, you won't get the money you feel like you're worth, or you won't get maybe the money that you'd get at an independent club. What they are offering is a fan base that you haven't yet met.
Yeah, new fans.
And I'm never gonna. I told her, I said, you gotta take it on the chin for a couple clubs out of the year. Not all your clubs, but a couple clubs. They're gonna offer you 13 dates that maybe is not, but it's 13 guaranteed dates that you'd have to hustle to get, and and you're gonna.
And
make
it also
some...
depends on how you're treated. Like one of the things that's so important to us, like with Morty's, and why people like it is the hotel's gorgeous. You know, we feed people. We let them drink within reason.
Yeah.
You know, we let them not drink away their show. I mean, you might be better when you drink, but there are a lot of comics who aren't.
Oh yeah.
And we just treat people well. We make it a good experience, and the crowd that we've built is for the most part respectful and happy about comedy. And so for us, it's funny. I'm sitting here going like, yeah, I don't really play clubs anymore because I have this rock club thing, but I'll still play the good ones.
Oh yeah.
So happy to play the good ones.
There's a lot of clubs. There's a lot of clubs that I took. I didn't rake over the coals for money this year because I was like, I like that club.
Well, here's the difference. It's about treating talent well. It's about the customer is not always right. And our philosophy, and this is something I got from Marshall when there was someone who was complaining, he was like offended that someone was making fun of the Blue Angels, and he's like, they fought for your freedom. And it's like, no, they're stunt pilots at county fairs. I think you misunderstood what
they do.
Talking about. But he's complaining to Marshall outside, and he goes, he's like, maybe this isn't the club for you. And so
Marshall, and I wish we had talked more about Marshall, but I'll have Marshall on the podcast. Marshall has always been a defender of the comic first.
Yes.
And then letting the business... hoping the business follows good comedy.
Well, two quick stories because we got to wrap up, and I actually got to drive to Utah as soon as this is over.
Oh,
I'm fostering a dog that has to go up there, so we're delivering him. So I'm trying to be an adult. And
you're
all that.
delivering the dog?
A blind pit bull.
Oh, that's gotta be fun.
Yeah, we're driving him up to Salt Lake, so there and back in a day, which is crazy. But we can't give him the life he needs here. He needs a lot of care, and I'm on the road most of the time. But anyway, two quick stories about how our clubs treat comics. One was at the Laughing Devil, sold out crowd. Everybody's having a good time. I'm actually one of the comics that went on. There were like 3 comics in. Some guy who ordered a bunch of drinks, drank them all, and then leaves and wants his money back after like 3 comics, saying the show's terrible. Everyone's killing.
Yeah,
show's terrible. He didn't like the show. He disagreed with the fairly progressive viewpoint that most comics have. And he's in New York City visiting from somewhere else and doesn't understand that, if a comic is progressive in Iowa, what the fuck you think they're going to be like in New York? So so he complains to the manager, I want my money back, blah, blah, blah. And the manager says, well, I'm sorry, you drank your drinks. You can't change the outcome of how the game was when you bought a ticket. Like you lost, I'm sorry, but, you're welcome to leave, but we can't give you your money back. You took seats from people who could have came in. So then he goes, I demand to speak to the owner. Manager goes, yeah, go ahead. Meanwhile, I'm right there, and I'm one of the comics he's complaining about. So I talked to him, and he's like, putting up this fight, and I go, I'm sorry, we can't, it says no refunds. You drank your drinks. You could have, if you left beforehand, we would have comped the drinks. That would have been fine. And he goes, well, I'm never coming back. And I go, yeah, that's what I just said. And he didn't like that. And then at Morty's, Jamie Kilstein was the comic, and he's incredibly
I'm ready for the complaints.
Yeah, he's incredibly. But the thing about Jamie is a great guy, and he's a very funny comic. Yeah,
but he is very polarizing.
He's incredibly polarizing, but he doesn't take it from the standpoint of like, Republicans are stupid. He's just like, let's defend women's rights. Let's defend gay rights, And it was during Indy 500 weekend on purpose. Because everyone would be distracted. Everyone who would hate him would be distracted with Indy 500, and the people who would still come to the club. We advertised it as progressive politics. It's a political show, leaning left, stay home otherwise. We put that on the posters. 4 born-agains came in without bothering to read a damn thing.
If your wife cuts your hair, you don't want to come.
That's awesome. Anyone who owns a Flowbee is not admitted to this. So 4 born-agains come in.
Compact cars only in our parking lot.
That would be amazing. We're out of truck spots.
That's all you have to do is just put lines in between all the other truck spots.
Exactly. And then they can't. Well, no, because they'll park there anyway. That's the worst part. So they came, stayed for the whole show, and then demanded their money back. Jamie actually was really nice to them and apologized and said, hey, I'm sorry. I'm not the comic for everybody. I'm sorry you guys didn't have a good time. The club has other acts that you might like. And the manager offered them tickets to a future show. No, not enough for them. They needed to make a stink. So they then send the club an email, 3 of them as if they're from different parties. Like, I don't already know what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
Calling us, we're not good Christians. I'm like, well, the club's actually owned by like a Jew and 2 atheists, and like, yeah, I'm a terrible Christian. I'm the worst kind. I'm a Jew. So
I'm the one that kind of gave you your religion.
Exactly. Well, in that sense, very good Christian.
Yeah.
So I write back and say no, and I get this vitriol back and just this terrible long ranting thing about how dare we blah blah blah. And at that point, I'm like, you've pushed me too far. So I said, we're not going to give you your money back. But you guys paid $60 between the 4 of you, $15 tickets. We're donating it to Planned Parenthood in your name. And so there is now a letter that explains the story with the donation to Planned Parenthood in their name that says, comics, we got your back. Because we want comedians to understand that if they're respectful of our customers, which they were, Jamie was perfectly respectful. He didn't, I'm not talking about getting the back of anybody who starts shit. When Eddie Griffin threw some shit at people, and or I guess they threw some whatever when he was like, lesbians are disgusting, you're terrible people, or whatever he said. That's not something we're going to be like, yeah.
How can you enjoy porn if you believe that?
But exactly, that's what I say. And the threesomes.
I like the lesbians that they don't videotape. I like the ones that people like.
They're just lesbians for the sport of it.
I have a real affinity to lesbians for some reason. I connect very quickly with lesbians, and I've dated a couple lesbians. And I lived with some lesbians in New York.
I dated one.
I dated a couple. At one point, I thought, maybe it's me.
Yeah.
That I love that. My favorite story of, and I know I'm Bertizing this story and making it whatever I want the story to be.
I love that that's a verb.
But I'm Bertranding it.
Yeah.
But was Doug Stanhope got in trouble in some city, and they fucking wrote him the most scathing letter. Your stand-up is disgusting.
Yeah.
It's inhumane. It's anti-Catholic, anti-Christian, and your jokes on abortion and AIDS are ridiculous. And Doug Stanhope wrote back and said, I couldn't agree with you more. When I got the script to me provided by the club for that night's show, I was not a fan of the material either.
That's
However,
hilarious.
They forced me to perform that material, and they wrote back like, I fucking knew it. Yeah, I knew it couldn't have been you. That does it. I'm writing by the Better Business Bureau. And Doug's like, good call. But I love when a club gets the comics backs.
Yeah,
I love that. That's the reason people fucking support great comedy clubs.
Well, and that is our goal.
I even like it. I'll take it a step further. I've had Doc at the Dayton Funny Bone not tell me about times when people got upset with me. Because he's like, you didn't need to know about it. I got your back.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I go, thank you, because I don't want to know about it.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with that shit.
Yeah, I want to leave going, everyone fucking thought I was a genius.
Yeah, I saw Marshall once at his own club where he could lose all the money. There was a big church group, like 25 people, and at his own club, he like finds out, oh, you're from blah 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 church or whatever, and this was 4 or 5 years ago. This was still at the Funny Farm before Skull.
I loved the Funny Farm.
Yeah, that was fun. The original one, not the one at Andretti's. The one that moved to Andretti's was terrible.
Yeah, I didn't like the Andretti's one.
The original one.
The original one was one of my favorite clubs.
Oh, it was great. Although, I mean, Skull, I believe, is the best club in the country. I mean, I don't just say that because Marshall's my business partner. I say that because I've never gone to a club with a better audience, with a more knowledgeable comedy audience. Anyway, so he was up there, and there was this church group, and he asked what church they were from, and they said, and he goes, now, is that the church that preaches that you should love your brother, or is that the church that's against gay marriage? Which church is it? And they were they found it funny, but that's a fucking risk.
That's a roll of the dice in Atlanta.
And that's what I love about Marshall, and especially the suburbs of Atlanta, the rich white suburbs.
Roswell. That's where all my buddies that are coming over today are from.
Yeah.
I guarantee you they wouldn't find that joke funny.
Yeah, no, not at all. But that is what I love about Marshall, about the idea that for him it's a phrase. The phrase Phil Palisol used this about me when I was a feature, where he said it's dropping the comedy plow and just seeing what happens. Yep, and that is a phrase I would certainly use about Marshall Childs, and I like it of him as a comic and as an owner, and that's why we get along really well. That's why we've been friends since the first time we worked together. Yeah,
Marshall's a great guy. I got to have Marshall on the podcast. Well, Steve, I appreciate you coming over, man. This really turned out great. It all started because I tweeted a picture of
Yeah, of me looking like Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
Or, no, Edward Snowden looking like me.
Yeah, woo, Steve's in some hot water.
Can I just say, there is a not small group of people on the internet who believe that I'm him. Who, like, they're conspiracy theorists. And I keep getting messages on my Facebook who are like, why won't you address this? Why won't you address? And I'm like, because it's insane. It's insane people.
You got to do a video.
I did.
Edward Snowden just hanging out and just talking to people.
I did outtakes of the original Snowden video. Like, I did it. There's a video on my YouTube. Just look up like Edward Snowden outtakes. And there's a video of me as him, like the same position, the same, similar lighting of just me saying things like, just ridiculous things like, they know everything about us. They know how many almonds we've eaten. They know how many times I've borrowed my friend's HBO Go account to watch Game of Thrones, and that guy got his penis cut off, and that was a really jarring moment. Like,
God, I can't wait for Game of Thrones.
It's the best. And so there's just like a whole bunch of that. And then I did one of me as him calling around for asylum to different countries. I've just been like, no, hey, Canada, I should have called you earlier. I'm so sorry. Like all that kind of stuff.
You look like Snowden, and I always thought Steve Byrne sounds like Tiger Woods. When you get a voice...
Oh, my God, yeah.
When Steve Byrne leaves you voicemail, it sounds like Tiger Woods' voicemail. Identical. And I was like, Steve, you have to do... you don't have to do a character. Just be you.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's Tiger. I'm going to choke the fuck out of you tonight. Like, just whatever. I'm clearly, I'm more thematic as opposed to material-driven in these bits.
Yeah, but it still works. I've done a couple Snowden videos. The only reason I haven't done more is because none of them took off the way I thought they would. Yeah. Like, my YouTube's huge. I have 35,000 subscribers, and the Snowden videos might get, a couple thousand views. I think just a lot of people just aren't educated enough to know why it's funny. Yeah. Like, they'll just go, hey, he looks like that guy. But then the content of the video... like isn't as funny. Yeah. So there was one part I made fun of. There's one of the videos. One of the clips. It just cuts back to me, and I just have no shirt on because he had kind of his buttons were a little too far open for
a snitch.
Yeah. And so I just made fun of that. Where I'm just,
living in an airport, I guess.
It just cuts back to me, and I'm just not wearing any shirt. It just for like half a second, I'm like, what is this too much? And then it goes back. So I had fun with it, but I better play him in the movie. I better fucking play him in the movie. There's got to be a movie. It's got to happen. Yeah. So if there's an Ed Snowden movie, if they don't call me first, I'm going to fucking kill him.
You should start really getting into that to your character acting now, like getting to know him and, that kind of shit. Yeah. Fly out to Russia, hang out with him for a week.
Yeah, definitely.
Get to know him. You should option the rights to the book.
I look like him, and I've lived in airports for many nights. So
perfect. Exactly. I heard he has a black sister.
All right, Bert, I'm going to drive to Utah. This was so much fun, man.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
It was great catching up.
It's been a blast. Thank you, Steve. This episode was brought to you by The Machine.